معانا النهارده كوكبه من اطباء اورام الاطفال في مصر. will be moderated بيا انا دكتور تامر حسان، انا استاذ طب اطفال وحده اورام الاطفال في جامعه الزقازيق. وهيبقى معايا سبيكرز طبعا دكتور حنفي حافظ من الناشونال كانسر انستيتيوت، هيتكلم على الامبورتنت ستيبس اللي بنبقى عاوزينها الاسسمنت للتشايلد ويز كانسر. معانا كمان دكتوره مروه زكريا مدرس طب الاطفال في جامعه الزقازيق، هتدينا توك عن الكيس بيزد ابروتش فور ا تشايلد ويز اكيوت لوكيميا اند هايبر لوكوسايتوزيس. معانا دكتور محمود الحاوي من جامعه المنوفيه، استاذ مساعد طب الاطفال في جامعه المنوفيه، هيتكلم عن ميدياستاينال سندروم دونت ويت تيل تو ليت. معانا دكتور احمد درويش استاذ مساعد طب الاطفال جامعه المنصوره، هيتكلم على كيس بيزد ابروتش فور ا تشايلد ويز ابدومينال ماس. ومعانا طبعا استاذ دكتور ايمان رجب استاذ مساعد طب استاذ ان شاء الله الاسبوع الجاي خلاص استاذ ان شاء الله استاذ طب الاطفال جامعه عين شمس، هتكلمنا عن سباينال كورد كومبريشن اند اونكولوجيك ايمرجنسي. وفي الختام انا هقول لكم كل الكلوزنج ريماركس والتيك هوم مسج اللي المفروض تاخدوها معاكم ان شاء الله بعد الورك شوب ده. ويهوب انها تبقى سكسسفول، ويهوب انها تبقى انتراكتيف وفاليبل بالنسبه لكم. وعشان احنا متاخرين فاحنا هنبدا على طول. والنكست سبيكر will be Dr. حنفي حافظ from National Cancer Institute, and his talk will be important steps in assessment of child with cancer. Please, Dr.
Good evening. حنفي حافظ Pediatric Oncology غيرهم حاجة I'm Pediatric Oncology Assistant Professor in National Cancer Institute and Consultant in Pediatric Oncology and Bone Marrow Transplant 57357. First, I need to simplify things. One of the most important approach in pediatric cancer patients or in child with suspected pediatric cancer is to have a systematized clinical approach from the start. Because if we miss something in a pediatric cancer or suspected pediatric cancer, you will have an emergency, and maybe 1/3 of the mortalities due to pediatric cancer occur very early on due to the oncological emergency or due to the even treatment-related mortality if I miss to assess the patient probably from the start. Then I suggest or I recommend to go through a stepwise approach from initial history taking, clinical assessment and diagnosis. So this is how to diagnose the patient, starting from the history, and now to unify thing, it's the rule of three clinical approach. Rule of three, each step of these steps for diagnosis with three categories of procedures, starting from the history, present, past, family and social history, clinical assessment for general examination, systemic examination, and local examination for the child. Then the diagnostics of three categories of workup, starting from the lab workup, and then the radiological assessment, and to reach the final diagnosis, we should have pathological confirmation of the tumor or the type. Then we will start by the history taking. One of the most important or the first step for clinical assessment of a child with suspected cancer, and this is for the general pediatrician. How could you suspect in this patient, for this child, that he can have underlying cancer in your mind? If he presented by one of these symptoms, like fatigue, decreased activity, pallor, bleeding tendency, plus or minus abdominal distension due to hepatosplenomegaly, this may denote bone marrow infiltration like a case of acute leukemia, or even metastatic solid tumor like metastatic neuroblastoma. If you have a patient with persistent or recurrent abdominal pain and increasing abdominal distension noticed by the mother, you can suspect growing abdominal mass for this child. If you have a patient with chronic persistent cough, cyanosis or blues discoloration, tachypnea or sognia, you can suspect a case of mediastinal mass and mediastinal syndrome. If you have a patient with limitation of movement, increasing body swelling or growing body swelling, this may denote extremity soft tissue tumor or soft tissue sarcoma. If you have a patient with recurrent headache or persistent headache, especially morning headache, vomiting, blurring vision, behavioral changes, seizure, neurological deficits, you can suspect a case of CNS tumor. So this is the first step. How can you suspect? From this, you can notice that I'm calling persistent, chronic, or recurrent. Not the first visit to just complain with abdominal pain, it's abdominal mass. No. Persistent, recurrent, with increasing abdominal distension, you can suspect abdominal mass. So this is the first step. Then, when I suspect this case with a pediatric cancer, I should exclude two important things. The first thing, is there any disturbance of function for this child? What kind of disturbance of function for the child with suspected cancer? Like disturbance in urine output. If you have oliguria, decreased urine output, in cases of urate nephropathy for those with tumor lysis syndrome that associated with high tumor burden like lymphoma, high TLC or high white disease with acute leukemia, you can have decreased urine output due to urate nephropathy. Or if you have a pelvic mass causing obstructive uropathy, you will have decreased urine output due to retention. So this is the first step, decreased urine output. But if you have patient with persistent or absolute constipation, you can suspect a case of abdominal mass like intestinal lymphoma, or associated Hirschsprung disease with megacolon in neuroblastoma. If you have a patient with disturbed visual function or behavioral changes or disturbed mental function, you should exclude this disturbance of function in case of CNS tumor. If you have a patient with disturbance in the breathing or respiratory function, this may denote abdominal mediastinal mass. Also, if you have a patient with hematuria, this hematuria may denote a renal tumor, and 25% of the cases of Wilms tumor can present with hematuria at initial presentation. Also, dysuria, frequency, difficulty in maturation in cases of bladder rhabdomyosarcoma. So the second category of question about disturbance of function. So if I suspect a case of pediatric cancer, I should ask the mother about these symptoms to exclude any disturbance of function according to the initial presentation or suspected primary sign. The third category of questions about emergencies. And as I said, this is one of the most important steps, to exclude initial presenting emergency for any child with suspected cancer. Because the early mortality in any kind with pediatric cancer constitutes about 75 to 80% of the whole mortality because of the emergencies. And the early intervention to manage or to correct this emergency is one of the most important steps to correct the child or to save this child. So what are the types of emergencies in case of pediatric cancer? For those with mediastinal mass, you can have patients with mediastinal syndrome, as we will see with my colleague. This patient will present with orthopnea, tachypnea, cyanosis, and dilated vein on the chest and the upper limb. For those with pain, vomiting, and diffuse abdominal pain, vomiting, absolute constipation, this may denote non-Hodgkin lymphoma, intestinal obstruction with lymphoma. And also lower limb weakness, plus or minus autonomic disturbance. This may reflect spinal cord compression with paraspinal masses. For those who had signs or symptoms with increased intracranial tension, like cases of CNS tumor, parameningeal rhabdomyosarcoma, these criteria denotes an emergency of increased intracranial tension. I should relieve this tension by dehydrating measures plus or minus shunt insertion. Also, for urinary retention and uriguria, as I said, an obstructive uropathy due to pelvic mass or pelvic abdominal mass. So this is one of the most important steps in initial clinical assessment of a child with pediatric cancer. The second category is the past history. There are three categories during the assessment of the past history of the child. The first history, which is very important, previous transfusion. If you have patients with underlying bone marrow failure syndrome or any predisposing condition for leukemia, this child will give you a history of repeated transfusion. Also, previous procedure, you should know if this child underwent previous surgical excision or biopsy, and what kind of biopsy before presentation to you. The second category of question about the previous medication. Sometimes if your patient, if our patient received medication like steroid, this will change the risk stratification at initial presentation with this child. Or if he had any allergy before, like septum, all of the patients received septum prophylaxis because of the lymphocyte dysfunction during chemotherapy course. So if this patient had septum hypersensitivity, I should know, or penicillin, because most of the patients receive penicillin-based drug during the supportive care. So I should know the allergy. The third category of question, which is very important, is the previous vaccination, developmental, nutritional. And even in very young child, like for those with low birth weight at initial visit, low birth weight at birth, associated with high risk of hepatoblastoma. And those with congenital anomalies like urogenital anomalies or genitourinary anomalies, mental retardation, associated with wellness tumor. The family history. The first category is the consanguinity, and the second category is the condition of the sibling. If you know, if you have predisposing condition like NF1, HLH, which can spread within the sibling and affect much more than one sibling, this denotes maybe underlying inherited disorders like inherited marrow failure syndrome, immunodeficiency, or primary HLH. And the family history of cancer. And we know that there are certain diseases or pediatric cancer associated with familial genes or inherited genes. And the most common in pediatric cancer is the B53 gene or Li-Fraumeni syndrome. And the B53 included in maybe 2 cells of pediatric cancer. You know, I don't know if you know B53 gene or no. What is the rule of P53? Good. This is one of the functions of P53. Actually, P53 is the tumor suppressor gene. And we have two major categories of genes. Maybe this is outside the lecture, but we have two major genes included in the tumor development. The oncogene, which are a normal gene involved in the control of cell cycle and cell proliferation. If become mutated, this will lead to uncontrolled proliferation. The other category of gene is the tumor suppressor gene. And the most famous tumor suppressor gene known is the B53 gene. And this B53 has dual function. The first function is to space or to lengthen the resting phase of the cell. So during any DNA damage, it will give a space for correct DNA repair. So the cell, which became a normal cell, can undergo division. But like the doctor said, if this cell has abnormal DNA repair, it will enhance the programmed cell death or apoptosis. So this is because the B53 is included in 2 cells of cancers in general, and including the pediatric cancers. In pediatric cancers that have B53 mutation, like leukemia, soft tissue sarcoma or embryonal tumors. But we need to know if this child have P53 mutation, or if this child have a family history of cancer, what kind of cancer I should ask about. The most famous reported cancer associated with P53 is the breast cancer. And then followed by bone sarcoma, soft tissue sarcoma, colorectal carcinoma, and I will show you. The second common pediatric gene, tumor suppressor gene, is the retinoblastoma gene, which is involved in retinoblastoma species in pediatric, and in osteosarcoma and small cell lung cancer. And these are the hereditary cancer syndrome known in pediatric patients or in children: retinoblastoma, Willis tumor, P53 neophromia syndrome, and rhabdoid preservation syndrome, SMART-P1, which these are the most common cancers associated with P53: breast, bone, brain, soft tissue, GI, and leukemia. The following step is the social history. ممكن حد يسألني ايه أهمية السوشيال هيستوري؟ أهمية إن أنا أعرف place of residency, socio-economic status, and the education and psychological status of the parents. ليه؟ pediatric cancer. Many publications reported إنه socio-economic status, education, and residency reflected even on the outcome, because it will reflect على adequacy of treatment, the continuity of treatment. It will reflect on even the efficacy, because ودي very famous, because يعني for example العيانين اللي during the maintenance بياخدوا weekly chemotherapy. في الأول لازم نصر عليهم إنهم ياخدوا كل أسبوع chemotherapy weekly. methotrexate 6 mb يجوا weekly. ففي ناس بيبقوا ساكنين في الصعيد بعيد عن بعض الأورام كتير، بيبقى عايز يجي في يوم ويرجع في يوم، فتبقى نتيجة إنه بيجي أسبوع وأسبوع لا. فبيبقى في interrupted treatment. There is a strong evidence that the interruption of continuation of treatment or maintenance treatment is associated with high risk of relapse. So we suggested later on to give the patient the 4 weeks at the same time, and he can receive this medication at the nearby pharmacy. This is one example. The second example, many of the pediatric cancer need even oral medication and needs to know the visit and the times of evaluation during the treatment. If the education of the mother, if the culture and the level of the education of the mother is low, and if we are not keen to educate enough and orient enough the parents to take the adequate or the accurate medication, this will lead to lack of accuracy and lack of continuity. The physical examination, general examination, 3 categories. The first step, and many of the patients with pediatric cancer, suspected pediatric cancer, the most annoying complaint is the pain. So please don't let your patient in pain till end of investigation. You should give painkiller first before completion of investigation to diagnose the patient. Maybe the only request of the parent and the child is to become pain-free. هو maybe مش عايز يعرف هو عنده ايه، هو just عايز يبقى pain-free. So the first step is to control the pain. Then you should assess the vital signs, and we should know that certain common cancers in pediatrics associated with initial hypertension in initial presentation, like 25% of Willis tumor can present with hypertension, and from 20 to 30% of neuroblastoma can present with hypertension, and maybe certain leukemias with cerebrovascular accident can present at initial presentation with either hypertension or hypotension. So assessment of blood pressure at initial presentation for case of suspected cancer is very important. And this hypertension can lead to hypertensive encephalopathy and emergency if you miss to back and to control the blood pressure you with your patient. So this is the vital sign. Then we need to exclude if there is any congenital anomalies, like we said associated with Willis tumor, like genitourinary anomalies, hemihypertrophy, hypospadias or epispadias. So then systemic examination. The rationale behind systemic examination in case of pediatric cancer, first, to or to assess for any ongoing emergency to correct this emergency. Second, to know if there is a disseminated disease or anywhere in the body or not. So I need to know the extension of the tumor. So we need to assess the other system for any disseminated disease. The third category is to assess the comorbidities, because many of the chemotherapy need adequate organ function before starting chemotherapy, like adequate organ function, adequate renal function, adequate cardiac function. So I should assess and exclude any cardiac impairment or any organ dysfunction before starting chemotherapy. So this is the systemic examination. This is, for example, one of the famous inherited congenital anomalies, inherited syndrome with Wilms tumor, Weigel syndrome, Wilms tumor, aniridia, genitourinary anomalies, and mental retardation. The other one is the big environment syndrome, associated with macroglossia, organomegaly, ureter hypoglycemia, embryonal tumors like hepatoblastoma, Wilms tumor, rhabdomyosarcoma. The final step in examination, in physical examination, is the local examination. I will say again, the rationale behind the local examination is to assess the disturbance of function or any emergency. So if I have patients suspected with mediastinal mass, I should look for if this patient cyanodes or not, have dilated vastness of the face and upper limb, dilated vein on the upper chest wall and the upper limb. This denotes mediastinal syndrome. And if you find this criteria, don't complete your assessment in the outpatient clinic. This patient should be transferred to either the ER or the intermediate care, because the patient with mediastinal syndrome shouldn't complete his assessment in the outpatient clinic. The second thing, if you suspect this patient that he has intestinal obstruction like tenderness, hyperaudible or silent abdomen, and generalized tenderness, this maybe denotes intestinal obstruction. And this patient shouldn't complete his assessment in the outpatient clinic. He should be referred to the ER for surgical consultation or intermediate care. And one of the most important things, if you have patient with paraparesis, plus or minus autonomic dysfunction or sensory loss, this is one of the most important emergencies. And you can imagine sometimes if you have a patient with paraspinal mass with curable disease, like even lymphoma, neuroblastoma, lymphoma, you can manage him or cure him from the cancer, but you will let him with permanent disability for life if we must to correct the the spinal cord compression for the first 2 weeks after the onset. And we have reported cases with this. Ewing sarcoma, it's a curative survival rate of Ewing sarcoma from 70 to 80%. So you will cure 70 to 80% of the patient from Ewing sarcoma chance of survival. But if you miss to back the spinal cord compression very early on, he will be Ewing sarcoma free, but he will be paralyzed for life. So please, assessment or proper assessment of neurological function for patients with suspected paraspinal mass and spinal cord compression is very crucial to spare his function. The second category is the assessment of the primary site, and actually assessment of the primary site to know the extension of the mass, either locally or regional extension. And the last step in local examination is the regional lymph node assessment, which is important in initial staging and the risk stratification, and will affect the treatment plan later on. So, once I did the initial physical assessment, starting from the history taken in the clinical examination, I would suspect or put the differential diagnosis. To know the differential diagnosis, we should know first the incidence of different pediatric cancer. The most common pediatric cancer, the most common type of cancer in pediatric population is the leukemia, the acute leukemia, either acute myeloid leukemia or acute lymphatic leukemia. 30% of the pediatric malignancies are leukemia. The second most common is the CNS tumor, reported from 22 to 25% of the pediatric malignancies, followed by lymphoma from 12 to 18%. Then the neuroblastoma from 7 to 10%. Then the Wilms tumor and soft tissue sarcoma, 6% and 7%. So this is one of the important steps. Because to put the differential diagnosis, you should know what's common is common. But we need to know more. We need to know the age distribution of different tumors. So we can divide the pediatric population into two main categories. The first category from 0 to 15 years of age, and the most common is leukemia, followed by CNS tumor. But we can see here, after CNS tumors, there are some tumors that are common below 15 years, like neuroblastoma, retinoblastoma, but we cannot see them after 15 years of old. On the other side, there are predominant types after 15 years of age, like lymphoma, either non-Hodgkin or Hodgkin lymphoma, germ cell tumor. But this germ cell tumor cannot be seen in very small fraction below 15 years, like 3.5% of the pediatric cancer. We can know more. If we are subclassifying the age category from 0 to 4, then from 5 to 9, and then from 10 to 15, we can see that the most common types of cancers below 4 years of age is neuroblastoma, Wilms tumor, renal tumor, leukemia, rhabdomyosarcoma. But from 5 to 9 years, the lymphoma become first. Lymphoma, then leukemia, CNS tumor. But in adolescents, the commonly reported tumor is non-rhabdosoft tissue sarcoma, also certain types of CNS tumor, and also lymphoma. So, how to put a differential diagnosis? We can put a differential diagnosis based on two main categories of data. The first thing is the primary site, the origin of this tumor, abdominal or mediastinal or CNS tumor, so the primary site. Then the age, like we said before. If your patient have abdominal mass, we need to know the origin. For example, liver. If the origin of the mass is the liver, the most common pediatric cancers in the liver is the hepatoblastoma. Then I can have embryonal sarcoma of the liver, angiosarcoma, or liver metastasis. If the suprarenal or adrenal gland, the most common type is the neuroblastoma, but we can have adrenocortical tumor or pheochromocytoma. From the retroperitoneal area, the most common type is neuroblastoma and also lymphoma. From the biliary tract is the rhabdomyosarcoma. From the kidney, Wilms tumor and non-Wilms renal tumor like clear cell sarcoma of the kidney and the rhabdoid tumor of the kidney. From the GI, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is the most common. And from the lower genitourinary tract, rhabdomyosarcoma and some rare types of non-rhabdomyosarcoma are common types originating from the genitourinary tract. But according to the age, below 2 years of age, the most common abdominal mass, neuroblastoma, hepatoblastoma, with certain renal tumors, especially rhabdoid tumor of the kidney, congenital mesoblastic nephroma, and even classic Wilms tumor. From 2 to 5 years, also neuroblastoma and Wilms tumor, and then we can see rhabdomyosarcoma from 2 to 5 years. But above 5 years, the commonest abdominal mass is the lymphoma. So this is how to put a differential diagnosis for the presenting abdominal mass. The mediastinal mass according to the age. We can see below 2 years, the most common is the neuroblastoma and germ cell tumor. And from 2 to 5 years, the commonest is soft tissue sarcoma followed by neuroblastoma. But above 5 years, the commonest type of mediastinal mass, the commonest tumor type is the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. For the paraspinal mass, the common types that causing spinal cord compression by paraspinal mass, neuroblastoma, soft tissue sarcoma, Ewing sarcoma, and maybe even lymphoma and metastatic CNS tumor. For the CNS tumor, generally, the commonest type of CNS tumor is the medulloblastoma. But medulloblastoma have two big times, from 1 to 4, and then from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 years old. But followed by cerebellar astrocytoma, and usually cerebellar astrocytoma occur between 5 to 15 years of old. Followed by ependymoma, and the median age 1 to 4 years, usually occur in younger age at presentation. and then the brainstem glioma with median age from 5 to 15 years. So the third step in diagnosis of pediatric cancer is the diagnostic workup. And as we said, three procedures, either laboratory workup, then the radiological assessment, then the pathological assessment. Laboratory workup, like, it's simple, CBC, and CBC can show for us signs of bone marrow infiltration like leukemia with peripheral blood, or pancytopenia due to marrow affection either from leukemia or metastatic solid disease in the marrow. And also the chemistry profile, as I said before, we need to assess the organ functions. So we need to know the liver functions, the kidney functions, the lysis profile, especially uric and phosphate. Coagulation profile, which is important before going to do any intervention. If I need to do biopsy, either open biopsy or CT-guided biopsy, I should do the coagulation profile to avoid the risk of bleeding during the procedure. Then, the tumor markers, which may give us a clue to the diagnosis of the primary tumor before even the definitive diagnosis like the pathology. The common tumor markers, NSE ferritin, which may be important in neuroblastoma, beta-XGE, alpha-fetoprotein for germ cell tumor. Bone marrow aspirate biopsy, if I have suspected marrow infiltration, either primary marrow like leukemia or lymphoma, or secondary to any other primary tumor. The second category of diagnostic workup is the radiological assessment. And I need you to focus on this slide because one of the most important we should know, I think we should know that what the most important modality and what is the most accurate modality if I need to assess certain things. So, for example, if I need to assess the paraspinal area, the most important modality and the most accurate modality is the MRI to detect the degree of interspinal extension for this child, which is very important in initial presentation or initial assessment of emergency. Also, if I need to assess certain sites like parameningeal or CNS tumor, MRI is the treatment of choice. MRI is the modality of choice. On the other side, the abdominal mass, like Willis tumor, CT is enough to delineate the anatomical structure, anatomical information for this child. For bladder rhabdomyosarcoma, ultrasound is enough for diagnosis of bladder rhabdomyosarcoma to see the thickness of the wall of the bladder. So we need to know what is the best thing to do for this child before doing the modality. And what is the value of doing this investigation? What is the aim or rationale behind doing this workup? In addition to assessment of the primary, either by ultrasound, CT or MRI, we should do metastatic workup to know the extent of the tumor or the cancer. If it's associated with disseminated disease or not, like CT chest to know if there is a chest metastasis or pulmonary metastasis or not, bone scan or MIBG to know if there is any bone metastasis or not, and also one of the growing used modality is the PET-CT, which is a very important in certain diseases, especially like lymphoma, to know the initial staging from the start, and also for assessment of response, the PET-CT. And before starting chemotherapy, as I said before, we need to assess the organ function, like the cardiac function by echocardiography, and the renal function by renal scintigraphy. So, after doing all this work up, the final step for diagnosis is the pathological assessment, which is the only way, especially in solid tumor, to know the definitive diagnosis. And the pathological assessment, the first step is to take the biopsy. And also, we need to think about the best way to take biopsy. It depends on the primary site of the tumor. Like in certain soft tissue sarcoma, maybe the best way is to take open biopsy and to determine the site of the tract biopsy before doing anything later on. For certain sites like abdomen, we can do CT-guided biopsy or ultra-guided biopsy. For bladder, maybe the only thing to do is cystoscopic biopsy. So the type of biopsy depends on the applicability of the procedure and the primary side. And after doing the biopsy, what kind of assessment I should do for this specimen to know the definitive diagnosis? The first thing is just histological assessment, to know the size of the cell and the tissue. Then, one of the confirmatory methods is to do immunohistochemistry, and that each type of tumor has specific markers to know to reach a definitive diagnosis. Like for sarcoma CD99, chromogranin, and NSE for neuroblastoma. So each histological type of cancer needs certain immunohistochemical marker to label it. And the last thing is the molecular analysis. And the molecular analysis for these types of cancer may have a diagnostic impact and prognostic impact. Diagnostic impact for debatable cases and prognostic impact, because now most of the protocols depend on the molecular classification of different tumors to build the risk-adapted cell. So molecular analysis for the specimen, molecular analysis during pathological assessment, one of the currently used in assessment of the child. So the final diagnosis should be coupled with initial accurate staging and risk stratification for subsequent better risk-adapted therapy. I just need to describe the risk-adapted therapy. الفلسفي هقول بس كلمتين على الفلسفي of risk-adapted therapy. وده يمكن اللي في البيدياتريك كانسرز الكانسر عموما يعني generally الفكره بتاعت الريسك ادابتد ثيرابي جت من انه في certain times they will behave better, so they don't need aggressive treatment because the burden of treatment is associated with drawback and morbidity. And I will discuss to you that maybe you will cure your patient from the cancer, but he will die from your treatment. And this is one of the challenges during the treatment of pediatric cancer. So the idea of risk-adapted therapy is to identify the patients with proposed a good behavior, to give them a less intensive treatment to avoid the sequelae of treatment, and to try to intensify treatment for those with high-risk features to further improve their survival rate. هقولها تاني يعني simply high risk had you highly intensive treatment, they will receive highly intensive treatment because they have a big chance of recurrence or relapse. They have a high risk feature. But the low risk patients, because they behave better, I can treat them with less intensive treatment to avoid the toxicity of this treatment. طب ازاي اتعمل الريسك ادابتد ثيرابي؟ اتعمل the first step to do risk adapted therapy is to identify the independent prognostic factors that affect the outcome of this disease. Then, to know the weight of each factor on the outcome. بعد كده بعمل scoring according the number of high risk factors within each disease and each patient to classify the patient. This is the philosophy of risk adapted therapy. So, يعني أنا حاطط السلايد ده بس عشان الناس اللي ما بتعرفش الاوتكم بتاع different pediatric cancer. You should know that there is a big hope for treatment of this child with cancer, because in overall for all pediatric cancers, the chance of getting a child cured from cancer is 80%. It's a good percentage. 80% of children with cancer can be cured, and this percentage can be more than 90% in certain types of leukemia and Hodgkin lymphoma and thyroid and melanoma. But still, there are certain types, especially the high-risk one, like high-risk neuroblastoma, metastatic osteosarcoma, certain brain tumors like high-grade glioma or glioblastoma multiforme, they are still associated with poor survival rates. And they need much more effort trying to improve the outcome for this kind of tumor. بس يعني انا عايزكم تبصوا شويه عشان تعرفوا انه الكانسر is not يعني it's not a catastrophic disease. و 80% of the children can be cured currently. And I hope maybe more than 90 to 95% with the next 5 to 10 years will be cured from cancer. So finally, maybe I can give you certain clues during management, during the treatment of patients with pediatric cancer. The most important rule is we are treating the patient, not treating the cancer. So before putting the plan for a child, first you should think about the rationale or the aim of your treatment, and the side effect or the drawback of your treatment, and the general condition of your child before giving him the treatment. Because a good fraction of patients die from the treatment of cancer, not from cancer itself. So currently we are treating the patient, not treating the cancer. And sometimes, if you have a patient with pain, like I said before, maybe the only thing he needs to be pain-free, not to be cured from cancer first. He needs to be pain-free. So you need to treat him from pain first. And the other thing, there are certain adolescents will face psychological problem, and this psychological problem can prevent him from completing the chemotherapy. So if you did not manage to support him psychologically to complete his chemotherapy, he will not continue his treatment. So you will not cure him. So we are treating the patient, not treating the cancer. The second thing is your patient is your guide. You should continuously think about your patient. Your patient is your guide. Even if your labs are okay and your imaging are okay, but your patient is not okay, you should think about the patient once and twice and repeatedly to know what's going on with your patient. So your patient is your guide. The third thing, especially in pediatric cancer, is to anticipate the event better than to treat its complication. And early prediction and early assessment and early intervention definitely will be associated with better outcome. And better management definitely will not be happening without better assessment. So proper assessment for any given patient is essential first step for better management later on. The last two things, don't be one-track minded. Sometimes while you are supporting a patient post-chemotherapy cycle from myelosuppression or infection, maybe you will be met with progression of the disease. So don't be one-track minded. Or on the other side, we can focus on giving chemotherapy for the child to get him in remission while he is running a complication for your treatment. So don't be one-track minded. And the last thing, for the leaders, for the physician leaders, for the senior staff, you should be confident and reassured. Reassurance for the parents, reassurance for the juniors, for the nurses, for anybody around you. Because if you are confident and reassured, they will cooperate with you nicely to manage this patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanafi. And we'll move quickly to Dr. Marwa, and we'll discuss a case with ALL, child with ALL and hyperleukocytosis. Please, Dr. Marwa.
Good evening, everybody. I think it's difficult to talk after Dr. Hanafi because he read all pediatric oncology in his lecture. But we will discuss a short item, one of the major problems which meet us during daily practice in oncology unit. This is our case who is a male patient, 13 years old, presented to our pediatric emergency department 15 days ago with red urine, fever, pallor, and generalized wound pain. A patient admitted to our unit, and when we see him, he was pale, feverish. His body temperature was about 38.7. There was hepatosplenomegaly, generalized lymphadenopathy, purpura as well as ecchymosis. There is also subconjunctival hemorrhage, as we see here, and there is also right lower motor neuron facial palsy as the angle of the mouse is shifted to the left side. Quick lab revealed total leukocyte count was 147,000 per cubic millimeter. Hemoglobin was 6.8 gram per deciliter. Platelet was 14,000, and urine analysis revealed RBCs over 100. So our interpretation for the previous finding that there is a case of hyperleukocytosis with severe anemia, severe thrombocytopenia, plus hematuria. So what will be the next step? Anyone? Bone marrow, yes, the next step will be to examine the bone marrow. And actually the bone marrow was infiltrated by about 83% blood cell, and bone marrow findings were consistent with T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia because it was positive for CD3, CD5, and CD7. So our initial management is to withdraw lysis profile as quickly as possible and start aggressive and supportive treatment, actually to prevent and to treat what is called tumor lysis syndrome by starting overhydration in 3 liters per square surface area per day fluid, alkalization of urine plus allopurinol. And baseline lysis profile was uric acid 7.5 milligrams, serum calcium 8.6, serum phosphorus 4.2, serum sodium 103.9, and potassium 4 milliequivalent. Urine pH at that time was 5. Baseline kidney function was within normal, and also liver function apart from mild transaminitis. Because it is a catastrophic, there is high initial leukocyte count, 147. So we need to recheck and recheck and recheck after starting our hydration and alkalization. So regarding the white blood cell trends, it was initially, as we see, with the starting hydration and alkalization. And on day 2, when we decided to start our chemotherapy protocol, it was decreasing to about 110 till it reached about 25 on day 4. Also serum uric acid baseline, it was about 7.5. And after we starting chemotherapy on day 2, there is gradual increase in serum uric acid, which it is something expected to increase after starting chemotherapy because of lysis profile. And this started to increase till reaching about 10 milligrams per deciliter on day 4, after which it was declined again to reach a safety level. Also regarding calcium, it was initially about 8.5, and with starting chemotherapy about 9, till it reached about 6.5. At that time, patient developed seizure at this time, developed seizure and tetany, for which we give him IV calcium. As we know, calcium it is not indicated to be given even if there is hypocalcemia, except if it is manifested hypocalcemia. So we give calcium only during the attack, after which we stop calcium after the attack was aborted. Regarding after that, it was corrected. After the also serum phosphorus, it was about 4 with starting hydration therapy, and on day 2 with starting chemotherapy it is declined. After that it is increased on day 6 to reach about 11, for which we give the patient phosphate binder to decrease the level of phosphorus. Regarding kidney function, it was when we started it was within normal, but it started to increase when we start our chemotherapy protocol till it reached about 1 serum create. after which it decreased again, but there was no oliguria or no any signs of renal impairment. Regarding also urine pH, it was about 5 before we started alkalization. Our aim is to keep pH in patients with hyperleukocytosis from 6.5 to 7 to increase solubility of uric acid and avoid the formation of any stones. So the summary of our case will be, we are in front of a case presented with high leukocytic count, which is called hyperleukocytosis. So our big threat is tumor lysis syndrome. Our plan was to start aggressive and supportive management to avoid this syndrome in the form of overhydration, alkalization, albuminol, and to withdraw baseline lysis profile in order to decrease white blood cells count, to decrease the uric acid, to increase the urine pH, and to start our chemotherapy protocol. Follow up, there is decrease in white blood cells, but serum uric acid increased, urine pH increased to 6.5 and 6. Patient developed convulsion and tetany, for which we give him calcium IV. There was increase in serum phosphorus, for which we give him phosphate binder, and serum creatinine increased but decreased without any impairment. So what is hyperleukocytosis? Hyperleukocytosis, it is greater in white blood cells, more than 100,000 per cubic millimeter. When we see a case of hyperleukocytosis, we term it is a medical emergency. This is a medical emergency. Why it is a medical emergency? Because it is associated with very specific and very dangerous or very catastrophic complications like leukostasis, like tumor lysis syndrome, and DIC or disseminated intravascular coagulation. What is the difference between hyperleukocytosis and leukostasis? Hyperleukocytosis is laboratory abnormality. There is increase in the number of white blood cells. But leukostasis, it is a clinical pathological diagnosis. Pathologically, there is morphological accumulation of large number of white blood cells inside the blood vessel with or without fibrin shreds. And the clinical diagnosis, this leukocytic count may lead to affection of many systems that can present it with many symptoms like renal symptom. Patient may be presented with renal failure, oliguria, vascular system may be retinal hemorrhage or retinal vein occlusion, renal vein thrombosis, respiratory like dyspnea, respiratory distress. So all these are clinical manifestations of leukostasis secondary to hyperleukocytosis. Actually, the pathophysiology or biology of leukostasis up till now it is not clear, but the commonly associated pathophysiological changes is tissue hypoxia or organ hypoxia secondary to leukostasis, which affected mainly by increasing in blood viscosity with impairment of blood flow. Blood viscosity is mainly affected due to many factors. There is increased what is called leukocrite, which is the partial cell volume, and increase in the mean cell volume of blast cell. Blast cell, its mean cell volume is larger than the normal white blood cells. So this increase the incidence of viscosity and increase the level of leukostasis. And by the way, the myeloblast has large MCV more than lymphoblast, so the incidence of hyperviscosity more severe with AML than ALL. Also, there is decrease in cellular deformability, which is more with immature cell than mature cells. So also the incidence of hyperviscosity more with acute leukemia more than chronic leukemia due to increase in immature cell rather than mature cell in chronic type. Also, there is a role of endothelial cell activation in which blast cell express many of cytokines like tumor necrosis factor and interleukin-1b, and there is also secretion of some adhesion molecule like VACAM1 and other adhesion molecule, which increase the recruitment of blast cell to the vascular endothelium, increasing the disruption of the vascular endothelial cell wall and causing more viscosity, more adhesion, and more disruption and hemorrhage, which all will lead to leukostasis and impairment of blood flow, with the end is organ hypoxia. Tumor lysis syndrome is one of the most common more common in lymphoid malignancy. ALL more common, but may occur also in AML. Tumor lysis syndrome occurs when malignant cells or lymphoid cells undergo breakdown, either spontaneous or a result of chemotherapy, with release of all the cell content like potassium, phosphorus, uric acid, and decrease in serum calcium. And then all of these will lead to major complications. As we said, there may be renal failure, there may be arrhythmia, there may be muscle cramp and seizure, and this is the whole problem of tumor lysis syndrome. Tumor lysis syndrome, according to Kaido and Bishop classification in 2004, they define laboratory tumor lysis syndrome and clinical tumor lysis syndrome. Laboratory tumor lysis stated that any two or more of the following laboratory abnormality occurring within 3 days before or 1 day after initiation of chemotherapy, like uric acid more than 8 mg per deciliter, potassium more than 6 millimole, phosphorus more than 6.5, and corrected calcium less than 7. And the clinical tumor lysis syndrome defined as laboratory tumor lysis accompanying one or more of the following, like increased serum creatinine more than 1.5 times the upper limit of age appropriate for normal range, history of acute kidney injury, cardiac arrhythmia, or even sudden death. Also the IC, which is a major catastrophic problem of hyperleukocytosis, which is defined as coagulopathy induced by formation of small clots consuming coagulation protein, platelets, resulting in disruption of normal coagulation and severe bleeding tendency. And International Society of Thrombosis and Hemostasis states a score for definition of overt DIC or non-overt DIC, depending on platelet count, prothrombin type, fibrinogen, and dimer. After scoring the system, if it was more than 5, it is overt or evident DIC, and if it is less than 5, it may be chronic or low-grade DIC. If it is 0, it is not a DIC. There is association between hyperleukocytosis and T acute lymphoblastic leukemia, as in our case, which is a T cell accompanied with hyperleukocytosis. As Kung et al. In 2014 stated that T cell immunophenotyping was present in 22% of those with total leukocyte count more than 100 and 33% in those with count more than 20,000. And Urkin et al. 2006 also stated that there is a strong association between T cell markers and hyperleukocytosis, where T cell immunophenotype was present in about 50% of cases with hyperleukocytosis. Also, there is a strong association between hyperleukocytosis and neurological or CNS manifestation, where Kung et al. In 2014 found that 22% of those with leukocytic count more than 100 and 80% of those with count more than 200 have CNS manifestation versus only 3.6 of those less than 100,000. Lewis et al. In 2015 also stated that 9% out of 178 patients have neurological complication, which leads up to 21% in those with leukocytic count more than 400,000. Also, there is higher association with many other factors of hyperleukocytosis with male gender, massive splenomegaly, and mediastinal mass. According to our case, the workup for a case of hyperleukocytosis is careful assessment for thrombocytopenia, coagulopathy, and tumor lysis syndrome. And we should keep in mind that platelet count should be counted manually and not automated count, because fragmented lymphoblast or white blood cells can be falsely counted as platelets. So it should be counted manually in a case of hyperleukocytosis, because also the incidence of CNS hemorrhage is very high in a case of hyperleukocytosis plus thrombocytopenia. Chest X-ray and the radiograph may show diffuse infiltrate. Pulse oximeter may be helpful in demonstrating hypoxemia. Also, we can consider CT brain if there is any signs or symptoms of intracranial hemorrhage. Management goals for a case of hyperleukocytosis is to make two things with each other: to make good and aggressive patient support, plus to do cytoreduction to decrease this horrible count of white blood cells. Supportive measurement, we mean prevention and prevention and prevention. Prevention of tumor lysis syndrome, it is more safe than to treat tumor lysis syndrome, in the form of, as we said, hydration, respirocase if we have respirocase, If it's not present, we can do alkalinization, allopurinol, and good monitoring of serum creat, urea, uric acid, potassium, phosphate, calcium, albumin, urine pH, bicarbonate, which should be done initially every 4 hours till about 48 hours. After that, we can increase the interval of monitoring of these important parameters. Avoid potassium, calcium, and phosphate in IV fluid. Avoid also transfusion of back to RBCs to avoid hyperviscosity, because already you are in a state of hyperviscosity. So don't give back to RBCs except if patient is going in congestive or heart failure. You can give a small transfusion in a dose of 3 to 5 milligrams of back to RBCs, and you can after that repeat the dose if the patient still needs. But try to avoid back to RBC transfusion. Also keep platelet count above 15,000 to decrease the risk of intracranial hemorrhage. As we said, hyperleukocytosis with thrombocytopenia, there is increased risk of CNS hemorrhage. Reduction of white blood cell count, what is called cytoreduction, by early initiation of chemotherapy and use cytoreductive regimen like hydroxyurea and leukophoresis. Early starting of chemotherapy, as soon as the diagnosis of leukemia has been confirmed. Actually, there is some debates on the starting of chemotherapy. Either to start low-dose chemotherapy if you have a high burden of tumor, like increased white blood cell count, there is mediastinal mass, there is lymphadenopathy, there is hepatosplenomegaly. You start the standard chemotherapy protocol, or you take low dose of chemotherapy. You can make a hole in this large mountain, or you can do explosion in this mountain. Actually, some researches were made on using low-dose chemotherapy plus cytoreduction in the form of leukophoresis or hydroxyurea, and others not recommend that pathway, and they recommend to start the standard or the target induction therapy plus urate oxidase or respirocase plus other supportive measurements. And this is a trial by Odzimir et al. Who it includes 15 children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia with hyperleukocytosis ranging from 100 to about 800 total exotic count. They start with them gradual dose of steroid, starting by 6 milligrams per square centimeter urea in the first day, then increased till reach 15 milligrams per square surface area at the end of the first week, and their results were about 54% there was decrease in the leukocyte count in the first day, second day 65%, and 76% on the third day, and none of the 15 patients developed any metabolic abnormality. And they conclude that intravenous low-dose steroid continuous infusion can prevent the progression of tumor lysis syndrome, and it may be used for patients presenting with white blood cell count between 100 and 400 in centers where leukophoresis or other cytoreduction agents are not available. Also, Ali et al. In 2016 stated that low-dose chemotherapy along with hydroxyurea and leukophoresis has been used in patients with AML with leukocytosis to achieve gradual cytoreduction in order to decrease the tumor burden. However, in a systematic review by Operi et al., they didn't suggest this pathway, or they didn't find any superiority to start low-dose chemotherapy versus starting the standard chemotherapy, and they concluded that low-dose chemotherapy and hydroxyurea should be reconsidered. Actually, the optimal management of symptomatic hyperleukocytosis is still uncertain, and there are no randomized studies demonstrating one is superior to each other. Therefore, it is recommended that intensive chemotherapy should be implemented as quickly as possible in treatment-eligible patients in parallel with supportive measures for DIC and tumor lysis syndrome. Leukophoresis, its primary goal is to reduce white blood cell count to less than 100, and it could mobilize leukemic blast in the S phase to improve the sensitivity of cell cycle dependent chemotherapy, to decrease symptoms of leukostasis, and actually to reduce the severity of tumor lysis and DIC and correct metabolic abnormalities. American Society of Apheresis stated that leukophoresis can be used as a second line, which is a grade 1B, strong recommendation of moderate quality of evidence, and it states some indication. indicated the whole white blood cells more than 100, and the clinical signs or symptoms of hyperleukocytosis in all children with ALL. And also in white blood cells more than 400 in asymptomatic patients with ALL. And in white blood cells more than 200 in asymptomatic patients with AML. But it is contraindicated in a case of acute promyelocytic leukemia because it will be, when rupture of promyelocytes, it will release many cytokines and it may lead to anaphylaxis, and it is called catastrophic degradation of promyelocytes. And also in massive intracranial hemorrhage. Possible complication of leukophoresis, hyperviscosity and stroke, because we exchange the blood with double volume of blood, and we try to take the same hematocrit of the patient, so we can avoid it or decrease the risk of hyperviscosity and stroke by using reconstituted whole blood, not packed RBCs with fresh frozen plasma, and choose hematocrit close to the patient. Also thrombocytopenia, one of the documented complications of leukophoresis during and after the procedure. So frequent monitoring of platelet count, it is urgently needed. And if the count is less than 15, transfuse platelet after the session is ended. Also possible complication, electrolyte abnormalities like hypocalcemia. So calcium infusion is contraindicated unless the patient is symptomatic, as we said before, and calcium infusion should never be given at the same time of bicarbonate infusion with good monitoring of heart rate and blood pressure. Also hypokalemia may be one of the side effects of leukophoresis. We can give potassium, but if potassium is less than 2.5, we can give potassium but very cautiously, and stop it as soon as the level is returning to normal. Also, we should monitor the heart rate and the blood pressure every 15 minutes, and hypomagnesemia, which can be also corrected accordingly. The last complication is fluid and blood component complication and cardiovascular. There may be hypervolemia reflected by hypertension, edema, hypoalbuminemia, so try to manage it with diuretics plus or minus albumin. There may be also hypovolemia and hypotension. We can give saline bolus. Blood transfusion reaction like allergy, anaphylaxis, cyanosis, so we can avoid it by using pre-medication, and if anaphylaxis occurs, we can stop the infusion and give adrenaline. Cardiovascular complication like dysrhythmia, sinus bradycardia, close monitoring the patient and doing ECG and correct calcium and potassium, obtain the level, then correct accordingly. Respiratory distress and oxygen desaturation, we can do chest X-ray, ECG, maybe spiral CT needed. And femoral vein thrombosis, where the site of leukophoresis, we can remove the catheter immediately and use thrombolytic agent. The last thing is hydroxyurea, which is considered as a cytoreductive agent. May be used initially when count is increased, but till now we didn't reach the definitive diagnosis, or when there is contraindication to start the induction therapy. It acts via inhibition of ribonucleoside diphosphate reductase, leading to implementation of DNA synthesis and DNA repair. Works more slowly than induction chemotherapy, and cytoreductive effect is expected to occur in about 24 to 48 hours, and the dose is 50 to 100 milligram per kg in two divided doses. Actually, conclusion and the closing remarks will be given by Dr. Temers, and I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marwa. And before moving to Dr. Mahmoud, do you have any questions for the two presentations before? Burning questions? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Then we will move to Dr. Mahmoud Al-Hawi, and he will present a case with mediastinal syndrome. Please, Dr. Mahmoud.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Metastases syndrome, don't wait till too late. يعني ما تتأخرش في التشخيص والعلاج عشان دي life threatening condition. الأجندة بتاعتي إن شاء الله هيبقى فيه case presentation، هنتكلم عن definition of Metastases syndrome، clinical presentation, approach to diagnosis with treatment, and I will end with conclusion. الحالة بتاعتنا case of female patient 9 years old referred to us with cough, dyspnea and fever for 5 days. By examination كانت generally conscious, anthropometric measurement normal for age, ولكن الفيس كان congested edematous with edema in the neck and left upper limb. كان في هورنر syndrome in the left eye عبارة عن ميوزس وتوزس. الشيست كان فيه ريسبيراتوري ديستريس وديمينيشد اير انتري على الليفت سايد. الهارت والسي ان اس كان نوت نورماليتي ومفيش اورجانوميجالي ولا ليمفادينوز. اللاب سي بي سي كان فيه نورموسيت نورموكروميك انيميا، مفيش ابنورمال سيلز، ليفر وكيدني فانكشن وزين نورمال، ال دي اتش والاي اس ار مايلدلي اليفيتد. دي الشيست اكس راي في ليفت سايد ماسيف بلورال افيوجن. سي تي في left side massive pleural effusion with underlying anterior mediastinal mass. عملنا سي تي guided biopsy، طبعا البيشنت admitted to the ICU. عملنا سي تي guided biopsy وهيستوباثولوجي طلع تي سيل نون هودجكن ليمفوما. يعني دي كلاسيك history of a patient with mediastinal syndrome. يعني ايه mediastinal syndrome؟ It is a group of symptoms and signs resulting from compression of mediastinal structure. 33% من الميدياستينال ماسز بتحصل في السن اقل من 15 سنه، يبقى احنا في البيدياتريك ايدج جروب هنشوف حالات كتير من حالات الميدياستينال سندروم. لو الماس صغيره مش هيبقى فيه مانيفستيشن، لكن لو كبيره هيبقى فيه مانيفستيشن، وممكن ما يظهرش مانيفستيشن الا لما الماس تكبر جدا ويجي لنا الطفل بريسبيراتوري ديستريس ويجي في ايمرجنسي. يعني ايه الاول الميدياستينم؟ الميدياستينم ده الكافيتي جوه الشيست اكسكلودنج اللنج. من الانتيريور بيبقى فيه الاسترنم، بوستيريور الفرتبرال كولم، و سوبيريورلي ثوراسيك انلت، انفيريورلي وثوراسيك اوتلت. بيتقسم عشان اناتوميكالي تو انتيريور ميدياستينم from the sternum to the heart, middle mediastinum containing the heart, posterior mediastinum from the heart to the vertebral column, with superior mediastinum above the heart. The consensus of the mediastinum, الانتيريور mediastinum بيحتوي على الثايمس والثيرويد جلاند والباراثيرويد والبلاد فيزلز والبريكارديوم والليمف نودز. الميديال mediastinum فيه الهارت والكريت فيزلز والتراكيا والممبرونكاي والليمف نودز. posterior mediastinum فيه الفرتبري والديسندنج اورتا والاسوفجاس والسمباثيك تشين. من الحاجات ديت ممكن نتنبأ نعرف ايه الماسز اللي ممكن تظهر في كل كومبارتمنت من الميدياستاين. الانتيريور ميدياستاينال ماسز ودي بتمثل 30% من الحالات. في البيدياتريك ايدج جروب اول حاجه الليمفوما، في الادلت لايف بيبقى فيه الثايموما والتيراتوما والجيرم سيل تيومر والثيرويد. Lymphoma is the most common cause of an anterior mediastinal mass in the children. بالنسبة للميدل ميدياستاينم بيكون الماسز اللي ممكن تحصل فورجات دوبليكيشن سيست، ليمفادينوباثي سواء اذا كان جرانيولوماتس عبارة عن تي بي او ساركويدوزس او ليمفوما او ميتاستاسيس في الاولد لايف. Posterior mediastinum usually neurogenic, neuroblastoma in the first decade of life and ganglioneuroma in the second decade of life. وبالنسبة لنا كهيماتولوجي rarely extramedullary hematopoiesis may occur. Clinical presentation of mediastinal syndrome. Mediastinal lesions usually symptomatic in the pediatric age group 75% من الحالات. السيمتومز هتكون يا اما نتيجه السيستميك مانيفستيشن او لوكال مانيفستيشن او الانفكشن. بالنسبه للسيستميك مانيفستيشن لو الماس دي نيوروبلاستوما هيبقى فيه هايبرتنشن، دايريا، فلاشنج نتيجه الكاتيكولامين ريليز. الليمفوما طبعا بيبقى فيه نايت فيفر اند سويتنج ويز ويت لوس اند ليمفادينوباثي. ثايموما بيبقى فيه مايسينيا جريفز. اللوكال ماس افكت نتيجه الكومبريشن على التراكيه والممبرونكاي بيبقى فيه سترايدور، ديسنيا، كاف، الاسوفجاس يبقى فيه ديسبيجيا، ليفت ريكارنت لارنجيال نيرف يبقى فيه هورسنس اوف فويس وبوفاين كاف. فرينيك نيرف كومبريشن هيحصل دايفراجماتيك باراليسيس، وكومبريشن على السمباثيك ترانك هيحصل هورنر سندروم. كومبريشن على سوبيرو فينا كافا، سوبيرو فينا كافا يحصل سوبيرو فينا كافا سندروم. ايه هو السوبيرو فينا كافا سندروم؟ دي المانيفستيشن اللي بتحصل نتيجه الكومبريشن او الاوكلوجن او ثرومبوزس في السوبيرو فينا كافا. لو حصل مع السوبيرو فينا كافا تراكيال كومبريشن ده هنسميه سوبيرو ميدياستاينال سندروم، وعاده الاثنين بيحصلوا مع بعض في الاطفال نتيجه ان التراكيه بتبقى كومبريسبل في البيدياتريك ايدج جروب. الكلينيكال مانيفستيشن اللي هتحصل هيبقى فيه dilatation للكولاترال فيلز في الابر بورشن اوف ذا بودي with edema and plethora of the face, neck and upper chest زي الصوره اللي احنا شايفينها قدامنا دي. ويبقى فيه cerebral manifestation زي headache و disturbance of consciousness و visual distortion. وممكن ما يظهرش اي مانيفستيشن لحد ما يجي لنا الطفل في الامرجنسي او في الاي ار بسيفير ريسبيراتوري ديستربس. هو از ات ريسك اكتر حاجه النون هوجكن ليمفوما، التيسل نون هوجكن ليمفوما، بعد الهوجكن ليمفوما والنيوروبلاستوما واللوكيميا والجيرم سيل تيومر. الابروتش تو ميدياستانال ماسز عشان نعرف طبيعه الميدياستانال ماس بنعتمد على الدايجنوز ريكوايرد كومباينيشن اوف كلينيكال راديولوجيكال بايوكيميكال وسايتوكيميكال انفورميشن. اتكلمنا عن الايدج واللوكيشن. بالنسبه للفيرست ديكيد يوجوالي نيوروجينيك خصوصا النيوروبلاستوما، اكبر شويه هيكون الليمفوما. اللوكيشن الانتيريور ميدياستاينال هيبقى يوجوالي ليمفوما والبوستيريور هيبقى يوجوالي نيوروبلاستوما. دايجنوستيك ايفالويشن الراديولوجي البرين اكس راي لازم اعمل بوستر انتيريور فيو ولاترال فيو عشان احدد اللوكيشن بتاع الماس. الالتراسونوجرافي دلوقتي زاد استخدامه، كل النواب والدكاتره بتوع جراحه قلب وصدر معاهم دلوقتي السونار. ممكن يعملوا بيركوتينياس او ترانسوسوفاجيال او ترانسبرونكيال لو الطفل كبير شويه، خصوصا لو الماس قريبه من الهارت او البريكارديوم، وممكن اخد عن طريقه البيوبسي. السي تي ده انفستيجيشن اوف تشويس ان ايفالويتنج شيست ماس، بتعمل لوكيشن حتى للسمول ليجن في الميدياستاين، ودي اللي بتابع بيها العلاج بعد كده. دي سي تي بتوضح لي ان في بلورال افيوجن وتراكيال كومبريشن، وهنا في بيريكارديال افيوجن. الام ار اي زي ما الدكتور حنف قال when contrast allergy or renal failure present, when vascular or chest wall involvement is suspected, urogenic tumor especially helpful in detecting intraspinal component. الايكوكارديوجرافي لو الماس قريبه من الهارت. راديو نيوكلايد سكاننج راديو اكتيف ايودين ابسايرويد تيومر سسبكتد. الجاليوم قل استخدامه بعد ما ظهر البيتي سكان. الام اي بي جي لو نيوروبلاستوما سسبكتد. البوزيترون ايميشن توموجرافي او البيتي سكان بيعتمد على ده بنحقن صبغه معينه، بعد كده التيومر اللي بياخد الصبغه بنصوره، بنستفيد منه في حالات زي الليمفوما، فيوكروموسايتوما، النيوروبلاستوما. البايوكيميكال ماركرز الالفا فيتو بروتين، بيتا اتش سي جي، وعليهم في حالات الجيرم سيل تيومر. كل الانفانت سسبكتد ويز نيوروبلاستوما بنشوف البالينايل مانديليك اسيد والهوموجالينيك اسيد. السيرم فيرتين ونيورون سبيسيفيك اليوليز بيبقوا عاليين في حالات النيوروبلاستوما. واخر حاجه طبعا الهيستولوجيكال اسسمنت عن طريق الفاين نيدل اسبيريشن او عن طريق الميديا سباينوسكوبي او سوراكوتومي، وده يعني في حالات بتبقى صعبه جدا ان احنا ناخد منها بيوبسي نتيجه ان هي جايه في ايمرجنسي. التريتمنت ثيرابي شود بي بوزيتيف ديبندنج على سيفيريتي اوف سيمبتومز وايتيولوجي. احنا بنعتبر السوبيرو فينا سندروم والسوبيرو ميدياستانال سندروم زي ان ايمرجنسي. اول حاجه البوزيشن بتاع البيشنت ما يبقاش ريكامبنت بوزيشن، لان دوت هيقلل الفينس ريتير. بنعمل اليفيشن للبيشنت هيد وبن افويد البرون بوزيشن. مينيمايز السيديشن. الطفل ده لو هيعمل اي بروسيدر زي البون مارو اسبيريشن، هيعمل البيوبسي، نحاول بقدر الامكان افويد السيديشن، لان السيديشن هيقلل الريسبيراتوري ماسل تون، هيعمل ريلاكسيشن البرونكيال سموث ماسل، هيعمل ديكريز لللنج فوليوم، وممكن يحصل ارست كاردياك ارست ديورنج ذيس بروسيدر. لو انا مضطر لاستخدام السيديشن او الجنرال انستيزيا لازم يكون في كونسلتنت من الانستيزيا موجود. نحاول نعمل الدايجنوزس ان ذا ليست انفيزيف مانر. لو نقدر ناخد عينه من البلورال فلويد بلوكال انستيزيا او بريفرال ليمف نود او بون مارو اسبيريشن، كل ما تكون ليس انفيزيف كل ما يكون افضل. افويد الانتيوبيشن والفنتيليشن، لان ممكن العين بتاعنا ده ما نعرفش نشيله من على الفنتيليتور، ولازم يكون في كونتينوس مونيتورنج ان ذا اي سي يو او الانترميديت كير. بالنسبه للامرجنسي تريتمنت، الاكيوريت هيستولوجيك دايجنوزس از امبورتنت فور ذا تريتمنت، ولكن بيجي لنا حالات في امرجنسي لايف ثريتنينج كونديشن بنضطر نعمل راديوثيرابي او ندي كورتيكوسترويد او ايفن كيموثيرابي، ولكن الابروتش ده بقدر الامكان نحاول نبعد عنه الا في حالات اللايف ثريتنينج، لان ده هيغير لنا الهيستولوجيك دايجنوزس بتاع الديزيز، وممكن ما نوصلش للدايجنوز الا بعد فتره كده. دي صوره لطفل عنده ميدياستاينال سندروم والاكس راي، ودي صورته بعد التريتمنت. So in my conclusion, there is multiple causes of mediastinal masses, ولكن lymphoma is the most common anterior mediastinal mass, and the neuroblastoma is the most common posterior mediastinal mass in children. When mediastinal mass is suspected in a child, don't be late in diagnosis and treatment. Always be prepared. Think about potential oncologic emergencies when the patient is present. Thank you for your attention.
Any question?
I want to assure about the sedation in Mediastin syndrome because we lost patients. Whenever a patient presents with Mediastin syndrome, do not please sedate the patients. Actually, we lost several kids because of the inadvertent sedation in those kids without being aware that there is a contraindication to sedate those kids. So please be aware of this.
Now we will move to Dr. Ahmed Darwish and another case for a child with abdominal mass. Please, doctor.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone. Actually, it is not one case, there are 4 cases, so we have time. Okay. So sorry. We have, in the beginning, we have 3 cases. All of them are presented with abdominal lump, or we call it abdominal mass. Our first case is a 3-year-old female presented to the outpatient clinic secondary to finding a lump in the belly, just fed by the mother while bathing her in the previous night. And the child was doing well, no fever, no respiratory tract manifestation of symptoms, no abdominal pain either, no urinary complaints, just a swelling, and the past history was unremarkable. She was afebrile, stable, vitally, she's active, playful, insignificant cervical lymphadenopathy, heart with regular heartbeats, lung was clear, and the mass was about 6 by 5 centimeter. It was firm, non-tender, and it was found in the right quadrant, but it was not crossing the mid-line, and the margins were well defined. Okay, so lab was done revealing a normal white blood cell count, a normal hemoglobin, a normal platelet count, a normal creatinine, normal LDH and uric acid, normal homovanillic and vanillyl mandelic acid, normal alpha-fetoprotein and HCG, and the urine analysis was having microscopic hematuria. So what do you think? Okay, so we have hepatoblastoma, neuroblastoma, Wilms tumor, precursor lymphoma. I think it will be Wilms tumor. Why? Because of most common in this age group, maybe because of All the other indices are completely within normal, so it's not lymphoma, that's good. And have got a microscopic hematuria, maybe this is one of the clues. Okay. Actually, this was the CT, and it was revealing a mass in the right quadrant, as I told you. And it was, by histology, I will not go through histology, it was Wilms tumor. Thanks for this gentleman, the German professor, who discovered first embryonic tumors, and also he was the man that he emphasized the pathology for the Wilms tumor, which is accounting about 5% of childhood cancers, the most common renal tumor, of course, the fifth most common tumor in children, and the usual age is between 2 to 5 years as our case. It arises from what we call the primitive metanephroblastoma, and the children who have got hypospadias and undescended testis, and that's why it's one of the key messages. Whenever you have a patient with hypospadias or undescended testis, please look for the abdomen, or you can do an abdominal ultrasound even if it is good to do. Some syndromes are very common, like Wagner syndrome, Dennis rash, and Dickus-Widman, and I will go back for this. Usually the masses are asymptomatic, no pain. And usually the caregiver is finding it by chance. And hematuria is only 30% of patients, and it may be associated with high renin, and that can cause hypertension sometimes. Usually the lab is normal, away from sometimes anemia due to the hemorrhage in the tumor, and sometimes microscopic hematuria. CT is important in order to see whether we have two kidneys are affected or not, and of course we have to look for the liver and the lung because these are the most common two sites for metastasis. Ultrasound is usually giving a well-defined solid mass with cystic areas, but we can do a Doppler because some vessels could be infiltrated like the inferior vena cava. The CT is heterogeneous soft mass, and it is usually have got no calcifications. And by MRI has got specific finding we'll not go through, but in the MRI sometimes we look for the inferior vena cava because sometimes you can have thrombosis inside, and this can affect the staging. Staging, we have 5 stages. One of them is just confined to the, you can go here, what confined to the kidney, and the other is just outside the capsule, localization and residual tumor, and we have hematogenous spread, and finally we have stage 5, which is bilateral Wilms tumor. The most common site, as I told you, CT should be done. If we have Wilms tumor, so CT to the chest should be done for both the liver and the lung. Wilms tumor, as Dr. Hanafi said, one of the success stories in pediatric oncology. 90% overall survival is very good. Only stage 4, which have got unfavorable histology, that have got a survival rate of about 17%. We have 2 schools in Wilms tumor, the American and the European. The Americans say that we have to do primary surgery, but the Europeans say that we can take a biopsy. But I think that biopsy, it is not mandatory because sometimes it can upstage or can cause some seeding. So if I'm sure by radiology that it is Wilms tumor, so we can go for treatment. Okay, surgery include nephrectomy. Please prevent capsule rupture, it's very critical. Of course, going to pathology, chemotherapy, radiotherapy could be of help, we'll not go through. So this is to wrap up. What do we have to know as general pediatrician about Wilms tumor? What about the second case? The second case, to make it clear, to compare between the previous one, also a 3-year-old male with low-grade fever, just fussy, and decreased oral intake, significant weight loss. He's irritable over the previous days, and he usually don't want to walk, he doesn't want to walk, and no respiratory manifestation, no significant past history. Temperature was high, irritable, insignificant lymphadenopathies, tachycardia, even an ejection systolic murmur, I think it's an innocent one, and a clear auscultation of both lungs, and a mass which is irregular, fixed, left-sided mass, and it's crossing the midline. And this is the findings, the lab findings. We have a normal white blood cell count, mild anemia, mild to moderate, and I think we have mild thrombocytopenia, low retics, and we have as well normal creatinine, elevated LDH, normal uric acid, elevated vanillyl mandelic acid, and normal others. So what do you think this case should be? Is it also Wilms tumor? Is it a hepatoblastoma? Is it a lymphoma? Is it a neuroblastoma? It could be. Actually, the CT was done revealing those calcifications. Okay, so it was a case of neuroblastoma. Neuroblastoma is one of the embryonal tumor also, but affecting the sympathetic chain, like the chromatin cells, the adrenal medulla, and usually from the primordial neural crest cells, and it is the most common extracranial. It could be sporadic, could be localized, disseminated. Some of them have got spontaneous aggression, and we have a risk stratification. We can say it's low, intermediate, or high, depending on the stage, the age, the ploidy of the DNA, and others. Usually the age is about 2 years, 90% below the age of 5. Unfortunately, it is the poorest in comparison, of course, to the previous case, which was a Wilms tumor. In the histology, characteristically, it's a round cell, okay? And we have to differentiate it from Ewing, rhabdo, and lympho. And as Dr. Hanafi said, we have some specific immunohistochemistry or specific stains like synaptophysin or chromogranin or whatever. Unfortunately, also, more than half of the patients could be metastasizing on the presentation, the initial presentation. Manifestations could be of constitutional, unlike Wilms tumor, like the presence of pallor, fever, toxemia, and we have other symptoms which can differ according to the site of affection, like the neck, like the chest, like the abdomen. Even sometimes we can have cord compression, as Dr. Hanafi have said, and we have also some metastases like in the marrow and the bone. We can look here, it's about 70% of the patients, the cancer, and if you look about neuroblastoma, 70% are in the abdomen, two-thirds of them are adrenal, but others can include the sympathetic ganglia, the chest, and the head and neck. This is one of the studies we have done with Dr. Tamer, and thanks for Dr. Yusuf Tombari, my professor of oncology. We have done a research maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It's a 5-year multi-center study with Zagazig University and Tanta University, and we discovered that a quarter of patients were less than 1 year old, and the other 3/4 were more than 1 year. And it was astonishing that 88% of the patients were presented maybe with an abdominal mass. The ultrasound is usually hyperechoic, and I told you about the calcification is very characteristic, and these are the calcifications and encasement of the large vessels. And if you look here for this CT findings, it's very characteristic. This is a left mass, and here the left kidney, it is compressed by the tumor, and here is the tumor encasing the vessels, unlike Wilms tumor. And lastly, the neuroblastoma mass, of course, most of them are just crossing the midline. We have a specific radiological findings, like doing bone scan using technetium. We can do also MIBG. We can use the PET scan, positron emission tomography, in order to do what we call the staging. And the staging here also, stage 1 is confined to the organ, stage 2 beyond the origin, and stage 3 crossing the midline, stage 4 is the distal metastasis, and stage 4S we will speak about it in more detail later. Characteristically, we have catecholamine metabolites like vanillin, vanillic acid, and homovanillic acid. LEH is characteristically high, and the blood counts, if the marrow is involved, it could be affected as well. The treatment depends on the risk stratification, which depends on the stage and the age, and the mass, the size, the DNA ploidy, and usually the localized masses have got longer survival rate. Those who are below the age of 18 months characteristically have got a low stage curable disease with a survival can approach up to 70%. But those above the age of 18 months could be metastasizing early. And a unique feature for neuroblastoma is the presence of what we call stage 4S and oxyclonus, myclonus sometimes in the eyes, and the raccoon, characteristic raccoon eyes. This is the 4S, which we say that it could have just stage 1, confined tumor, but have got distal metastasis only in the liver, skin, and bone marrow, and have got a very excellent prognosis. The third case. The age is different. It's not a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year-old, it's a 6-month-old female. Presents to the pediatrician with vomiting, and was treated as a case of reflux, with an attack, and she have got normal past history, but a characteristic family history, as mentioned in the first lecture, of what we call colon cancer and colon polyps in the maternal family members. Vital signs were good. Abdominal examination, significant huge liver, and the abdominal ultrasound revealing multilobular mass in the right loop of the liver, 7 multiplied by 10. Liver enzymes mildly elevated, bilirubin is mildly elevated, CBC, mild anemia, but it was significantly very, very high alpha-fetoprotein. So what do you think it could be? Our third case? Our third case is a case of mostly hepatoblastoma. Hepatoblastoma, this was a CT, and if you go to the hepatoblastoma directly, it is the most common malignant, 2/3 of malignant liver tumors in pediatrics, and usually in the first 4 years of life, and usually in males. That's why age 6 are very important sometimes. Of course, it depends upon the staging. One of the most characteristic features in the history is the prematurity sometimes, because it is significantly higher in patients with hepatoblastoma, and usually associated with cancer genetic syndromes, like Dr. Hanafi said, Ecoswidman, Framini, and others like polyposis and colorectal carcinoma. In the imaging, there is a hyperechoic, there is distortion of the vasculature, a high vascularity in the Doppler, and the CT is also heterogeneous with necrosis, hemorrhage, calcification. But I want to tell you something very important is a hepatomegaly is not mandatory to be only hepatoblastoma. It could be a metastasis from others, because liver metastases are more common than a primary hepatic tumor, so we have to look for other sites, like it could be more commonly to be neuroblastoma or even others. I'm not going to go through the, this is the images are the liver metastases. I don't have a case for the fourth case of an intestinal tumor, but one of the most common cases we can show is a patient who have got Peyer's patches lymphoma, or we call it Burkitt's lymphoma. It is the most common tumor affecting the intestine. It's called Burkitt's lymphoma, and I will end my talk with an approach, because we mentioned about, maybe we can say it, I summarize it in 4 cases. We have a case of Wilms tumor, we have a case of neuroblastoma, a case of hepatoblastoma, maybe sometimes liver metastasis, and it may be also Burkitt's lymphoma. Abdominal mass, whatever the age is something is annoying for both the parents and the physician as well. And it needs an approach, and this approach, in order to be confined, size is very important, age is very important, associated symptoms and signs are very important. What are the questions I'm going to ask the mother about in order to narrow the diagnosis? The first questions I'm going to ask, of course, is the age, and it's very important to notice that the older the age, the more the malignant I could have. Okay? It's very important, because children below the age of 2 years, if I have a malignancy, it could be a neuroblastoma or a hepatoblastoma. Older children usually have got Wilms tumor and genitourinary and, of course, germ cell tumor. And these are the questions I have to answer myself about the mass. Number 1, where is it? The site, its onset, its duration, its progression, is a pain present or not, if there is preceding trauma, and I will go back to trauma later, and changing any diet habits and what is increasing and what is decreasing sometimes. For example, if I have a mass in the upper right quadrant, it could be one of these 4. It could be a hepatoblastoma, a Wilms tumor in the right kidney, a neuroblastoma in the right adrenal, and it could be something in the gallbladder, for example. The longer the duration we have a mass, it's usually to be a benign, not a malignant one. But the faster the growing, of course, it could be a malignant one. Constitutional manifestations are very important, like the presence of pallor, anorexia, weight loss, and fever. We have to mention by positive or by negative. Constipation or oliguria means I can have an obstruction, either in the GI or in the genitourinary. Don't forget to ask about watery diarrhea. It should be mentioned by positive and by negative, because its presence means vasoactive intestinal peptide secretion. It could be a neuroblastoma. We have to mention also the GI manifestation, because their presence can tell us that the problem is in the GI itself. Or it could be an emergency, like in a susception or a volvulus, as in lymphoma and others. Of course, hematuria, as we mentioned, it is an ominous sign, it's an alarming sign to well of tumor. Prematurity is also important, as I told you, in hepatoblastoma. Don't forget to ask about history, past history in the neonatal age, because sometimes if the patient is suffering from, in the prenatal life, from oligohydramnios or polyhydramnios, and a mass is present, it's not mandatory to be a malignant or a tumor, it could be something congenital. On examination, don't forget fever, because some infections, like for example hepatitis, mononucleosis, leptospirosis, could be presented by masses in the liver, spleen, and gallbladder later. At the same time, don't forget to look for the eye and the surrounding area of the eye, for the raccoon, for the proptosis, even for aniridia could be present in some syndromes. Okay, like Dr. Central. Of course, we have to respect, we have to palpate, we have to auscultate the sound, we have to palpate lightly and deeply, and we have to percuss in order to see whether it is a tympanic, it is a dull, is it cystic, is it solid. We have to examine all the others, especially genitalia, because genitalia is related to the renal tumors, as I mentioned. CBC is important if affected. Bone marrow means it is affected. Bone marrow aspiration and biopsy should be done if the CBC is affected. Don't forget the uric acid and the LDH as mentioned before. Don't forget to do urine analysis and other tumor markers like HCG and alpha-fetoprotein. For imaging, plain X-ray could be of benefit sometimes for the calcification, fecal impaction sometimes, spinal obstruction. Ultrasound is good because it can tell us the difference between cyst and solid, can tell us the site of the tumor, suggest the etiology, tell us something about the vascularity, especially Doppler, but the problem is that it's operator variable, and of course sometimes it's masked by gases, and if it is large, we have to do a CBC, we have to do a CT scan, and don't forget, away from the abdomen, if there is an abdominal malignancy, we have to do pan-CT for everything, for metastases, and MRI could be of benefit, and HIDA scan for the liver tumors. How can we manage? Number one, after doing all of this, we have to, before going through biopsy, you have to go first for a pediatric oncology center, because diagnostic studies, multidisciplinary approach, sharing opinions from the surgeon especially is very important. Surgical consultation is very important whenever you have an abdominal mass, because it can share in the opinion, number one. Number two, emergency, urgently, like in the presence of intestinal obstruction. Sometimes the operation is only for staging, for obtaining a tissue, for a resection, to help radiation, to help chemotherapy, so we have to know the goal of operation exactly. And sometimes when the surgeon goes through the abdomen and sees that the tumor is very massive and reaching other structure, sometimes only taking samples of lymph nodes could be of benefit, taking a part of the malignant or the mass, and don't put it in a formalin. To take a home message, any mass, it's an alarming part for malignancy. Differential diagnosis, as you can see, is extensive. History examination investigation could help us to refer, and age 6 origin symptoms signs could narrow. Malignancy is more common in children. These are the most common malignancies. But before saying bye-bye, I have to mention a very interesting case we see 10 years ago. But because I'm going to speak about abdominal malignant masses, I have to mention this, because we have 10 years ago, a child, he was 11.5-year-old, and was presented with a left-sided loin pain and hematuria, and nothing was significant away from falling down the stairs in the school, maybe 4 or 5 years before, and physical examination revealed tenderness over the left loin region, and CBC was clear, creatinine was clear, urine analysis, microscopic hematuria, it was not a frank hematuria. And when we do an ultrasound, it was significantly characteristic, because we have here a mass, it is heterogeneous, related and infiltrating the upper left renal pool, and we was expecting to have neuroblastoma. And actually this was the CT revealing this heterogeneous soft tissue retroperitoneal mass. It's about 7 by 5 by 8 centimeters, very large, and infiltrating the lower part of the left kidney. So what can we do next? What do you think? This was the history. A patient have got this loin pain, this tenderness on examination, and this mass 8 by 7 by 5. So what to do next? We are expecting to do an ultrasound guided biopsy. While I was just taking history in more details, we discovered that the brother is a hemophilia A patient, and he was doing a tonsillectomy. He discovered it by accident, and also the same patient was having bleeding after circumcision at the age of 3 years. And when we do the bleeding profile, everything was good except the clotting time, and everything is mildly prolonged. And looking to factor 8, it was only 35%, and the von Willebrand was normal. So we diagnosed a case of mild hemophilia A. And the patient was getting plasma and factor 7, and it was relieved within 4 weeks. And it was diagnosed as a case of renal hemophilia pseudo tumor. And Dr. Yusuf Tumbari, our professor, just published it in Hemophilia. Maybe, I think it was 2010. It's 9 years ago. Thanks for that.
شكرا دكتور احمد. يعني very interesting cases, very simplified approach. And now we will move to Dr. Iman Ragab, and she will present spinal cord compression and oncologic emergency.
I will try to be very prompt, I promise. But I will show a video because I called mom of one of my patients yesterday, telling her, just send me how does she walk after this long time. She's a 5-year survivor after bone marrow transplantation for metastatic neuroblastoma. Have you seen the gait? I will repeat it very rapidly. She's walking after several, like more than 12 surgeries, just to fix her pelvis and to adjust her lower limb. So sometimes cancer survivorship is not the end, but it's the start of suffering of some kids. So I will start by picking up the pitfalls we may face during management of the patients with neurological complications. How many of you have faced kids with paralysis, lower limb paralysis or paralysis? 1, 2, 3. Okay. I will. A 2.5-year female presented with a 3 months history of acute onset of ascending paralysis. Mom had stated that she had a lower limb weakness, and then the trunk was affected later afterwards, and neurological exam revealed asymmetrical hypotonia and hyporeflexia of both lower limbs, and the nerve conduction velocity showed axonal neuropathy, and the CSF revealed cytoabdominal dissociation. So what's the diagnosis probably? Mostly, all of us will say that it is case of Guillain-Barré syndrome. And the kid usually went to the neurology department. She received steroids, intravenous immunoglobulin. She started to sleep on her back. She wasn't able to sleep. She had flexed back. And then motor power was not regained. So neurology department had decided to do an MR brain, an MR cervical, and upper dorsal spine, which were normal. So they were thinking to do to give more immunosuppressive therapy or plasmapheresis, and at this time something popped up, which is a back swelling appeared in a different area from the expected, which is they did and cervical and upper dorsal MR. At this point, so please revise the diagnosis. Do not take a referral diagnosis, because she was referred with a paper that she had an ascending paralysis. Whenever you have ascending paralysis, usually the upper limb is involved at some point. If it stops at the level of the lower limb, you do not take it for granted as Guillain-Barré, because Guillain-Barré is a diagnosis of exclusion, and we have a problem with diagnosis of Guillain-Barré in our kids with cancer, because they present with lower limb paralysis and it stops at the level of the lower limb, and they're not searching for further investigation. And the choice of MR spine. In the limited MR spine, whenever I think of doing a partial MR, it's usually a wrong decision. When I think of something involving the cord, the primary MR usually should involve a whole cord analysis, because I cannot, with the development of the case, something may give false affection of a higher level. So please, whenever possible, I do the initial investigation. Why is that? Because sometimes even a very small lesion like this one, oops. How would I use the pointer from this one? The nose? So a whole MR spine is usually required initial investigation, and sometimes a very small lesion affected one solidly, one vertebrae may be missed if I do a very small cut in the MR choice. And am I allowed to do a whole CT for the whole spine? Usually the radiation dose is too big to be allowable in kids because of the later development of very toxic dose. Have you ever did an LP, lumbar puncture? The level of LP, which usually we do at the level of which level, which vertebrae? L4-5. Okay, L4-5. Why is that? Because the cord ends at the level of L1-2 or L1. So, do spinal cord compression may present with a lower motor neuron lesion. Usually, I don't know why do we have the concept that whenever cord compression is expected, I may have an upper motor neuron lesion of lower limb. No, asymmetrical affection of lower limb, paresis in the form of hypotonia, hyporeflexia could be a coda equina syndrome. So I can have a coda equina syndrome, which is affection of the beyond the level of the cord. The cord ends at the level of L1, I may have affection, asymmetrical paralysis, hypotonia, and hyporeflexia. Another kid, 2-year-old, presented to the ER with persistent crying. Mom noticed abdominal distension. The child was not moving properly. There was a palpable mass on the left side of it. This is not for the kid, for sure, but there was a palpable mass on the left side of the abdomen. Abdominal ultrasound revealed a left retroperitoneal mass, and he was referred to the oncology center, and they gave him a date for 2 weeks, the waiting list for 2 weeks. What's the major pitfall in such assessment of this kid? What do you think? Any retroperitoneal mass, I have to examine the lower limb, because whenever I refer a patient to the oncology center saying that the child cannot move his lower limb properly, is not equal to a patient with abdominal mass. He can go for his waiting list. The time is cord recovery. So whenever I refer him with a cord compression, this is an emergency, a top emergency. So I cannot refer him with a very calm referral paper that he has an abdominal mass. It's quite different from referral with an urgent cord compression. So this is different for the assessment of the oncology center. So any retroperitoneal mass, lower limb exam, neurological exam is mandatory. And pseudoparalysis does not mean weakness, because sometimes we say that the patient has pain, so he does not walk. No, pain does not cause weakness. It causes guarding during walking, or abnormal or fussy or funny gait, but no paresis or paralysis. Another child, 12-year-old young man, presented with back pain. And he attributed that he doesn't go, mom, this is a true story, al fikra. Mom attributed it that he does not want to go to school. So he presented, during the initial assessment, I ordered which investigation? MR brain, MR spine, abdominal ultrasound, bone marrow exam, MR spine. Back pain equal MR spine in kids. There is no, so message 3, back pain is serious. There is no vitamin D related back pain. We are not an adult. Kids are not small adults. They are different. So percussion of the bladder, please, should be done in any neurological exam. And number 3, back pain are not growth pain. They are not growing pain. Cannot be back pain. Why back pain and what type of back pain? I expect in cord compression that the back pain maybe like adult with the root pain, disc prolapse or something severe, agonizing. No, usually do not face the root pain in kids. or the tract pain, which is associated with paresthesia or something. It's not common in kids. What's common in kids is just dull aching pain, just dull aching back pain, and dull aching back pain should be taken seriously. I omitted one slide. So another stuff, whenever I find an unexplained hydrocephalus in kids, I have to do MR spine, because sometimes hemorrhage go to the subarachnoid and obliterate the subarachnoid space. Sometimes proteins obliterate the subarachnoid space. Sometimes cervical compression of the foramen magnum causes hydrocephalus. So whenever I do not find an explanation for hydrocephalus, I would go for imaging of the spine. Okay? So red flag for cord compression is back pain, weakness for sure is, yeah, but back pain usually is missed. Sphincteric disturbances, child who become uncontrolled after being primarily controlled. Gait disturbance and sensory deficits are usually can be a manifestation. And do not get confused with the intermittent symptoms, because there is usually edema and resolving of the edema. So intermittent symptoms is not against the progression of the disease. Do you expect that the cord compression, the lesion could be inside the cord itself, could be in the dura or underneath the dura, or could be from the bone and compressing? In kids, do you expect it is outside or inside or in the dura? What site do you expect it? Outside. Outside ولا ايه؟ outside خالص ولا outside dura ولا outside cord ولا inside cord؟ يعني هنا؟ epidural, yeah. Epidural and outside the dura, يعني outside هنا. This is the commonest PEDIA in kids. Mass inside the cord is not common in pediatric. Outside the cord is common in pediatric. الجورال is the least. السبجورال is the least. طبعا ايه اللي بيحصل ده نفس مش عارفه مين اللي كان حاطط الفيجر حاجه فيه. This is the commonest ان انا عندي حاجه outside epidural and then compressing the cord. طبعا neuroblastoma, sarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, everything is possible. Inside the cord itself, الكود نفسها يطلع منها ايه؟ يطلع منها astrocytoma في البيدياتريك more common, and then ependymoma. And then the coda equina syndrome usually has anything compressing below the level of the spinal cord. In adults, mostly the epidural is the commonest, and it's usually metastasis. And the second common is the meningioma. And this is the picture you see in pediatrics, a mass outside the cord and coming to compress the cord at cellular level. This is the common in adults. It is a dural mass and then compressing the cord. This is different. And in adults, they present usually by pain and motor deficits, and the pain commonly have a root pain and then paralysis. In kids, it is different. In kids, they present usually with secondary inability to walk as upfront presentation, which is very bad. It can be anything. This is a study done in our center by Professor Isaac and the team, and Fatma is one of the authors. So they present, the median delay of diagnosis is 42 days, which is too long for the cord recovery. Okay? And the best tumor for sure is the tumor which melts with chemotherapy, which is the lymphoma. This is another study from the Children's Cancer Hospital, and they found that a cutoff level of 4 weeks is a cut, before 4 weeks and after 4 weeks, if the cutoff is the best, and less than 4 weeks is the best neurological recovery. So whenever I suspect a cord compression, first thing is before MRI. Dexamethasone. Whenever I suspect, I have to start dexamethasone. I'm saving the cord. The cord is precious. So even if without neurological deficits. And would I go for surgery? Surgery sometimes is mandatory, but surgery is not a good option. You know, this is the spine and this is the lamina. And what they do is they remove the lamina, either total or partial laminectomy, so they expose part of the cord, and then we end up by an unstable vertebrae. So, and sometimes they do fixation of the vertebrae, and this fixation may give the child inability to grow properly. So it's not the best option, and the least side effect is scoliosis. So laminectomy or laminoplasty is not a very good option. And after all this story, whenever we have delay, we end up by this unsensory lower limb and with trophic ulcer and a very bad long-term survivorship. The anti-Anderson, which is a very time is out. When they proposed that whenever I have pain and neurological symptoms, I have to start dexamethasone and an urgent MR. And whenever I suspect, I have to go for, if the MRI supports cord compression, I would emergently call the neurosurgeon if I have neurological defects or if I have spinal instability. Otherwise, if not, I would notify the neurosurgeon as well, even if the MR is not suggestive. And if the tumor is chemosensitive, they will go for the primary oncology to start chemotherapy urgently, not for surgery rapidly if the tumor is chemosensitive. That's what we do in pediatrics. If I am expecting neuroblastoma, so whenever I can diagnose within 48 hours, I wouldn't refer to the patient to the neurosurgery. But if I have delay, I have to go for the neurosurgery, calling him. And this is a advice. When do I have do I have to worry about my child having a back pain? If the back pain is persistent, if it's associated with neurological, with constitutional symptoms, if it is constant in one single part, and if the child is experiencing any numbness or weakness. So take home, please, that time is the recovery of the cold it's precious, more precious than money. The back pain is a clue of a spinal cord tumor. MRI, please, should be done urgently the same day, and it is never once exam. Just follow the patient. Even if he has a symptom and the sign did not appear yet, tomorrow or within hours, sometimes the symptom appears. So please, it's not just once exam and you forget about your kids. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iman. Very interesting casing, a very simplified approach. And before we take home message, I will introduce Dr. Fatma Abid to discuss some important issue in supportive care, which is about antiemetics and the new formulation of antiemetics.
السلام عليكم. ازيك يا دكتور ياسر؟ شرفنا طبعا دكتور ياسر، والله انا عارفه ان احنا كلنا هننام. انا هتكلم بسرعه عشان انا وعدت دكتور تامر يعني ان انا دايما بطول، فانا مش هطول خالص ان شاء الله المره دي. انا هتكلم عن المانجمنت اوف كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج ده ريكوجنايز سايد افكت ويل نون للكيموثيرابي، وده دايما بيبقى سايتد بالبيشنت حتى قبل ما يبتدي الكيموثيرابي من الميديا، يعني بيفور حتى امباركينج ان هو يبتدي ياخد كيموثيرابي. ده بيبقى اكتر حاجه سايتد بالعيانين. طيب هو هارمفول على الكواليتي اوف لايف، بيعمل فيسيولوجيكال امبيرمنت وبيعمل بيردن كمان على البرفورمانس بتاع العيانين. احب اقول بس شويه ديفينيشن عشان لما نتكلم يعني وانا بتكلم في المحاضره نبقى احنا عارفين كلنا احنا بنتكلم نفس اللغه. ايميدوجينيسيتي معناها اللايكلي هود بتاعه الكيموثيرابي ده انه ينديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج، والنوزيا عباره عن unpleasant feeling موجود في الثروت او الاستومك، ممكن او may or may not يبقى معاه فوميتنج. والفوميتنج طبعا زي ما احنا كلنا عارفين ان هو بيبقى ايجكتنج لكل الكونتنت بتاعه بتاعه الاستومك. عندنا بعد كده الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج بتبقى كلاسيفايد على حسب الوقت اللي هي بتحصل فيه. لو حصلت في اول 4 قبل ما ناخد الكيموثيرابي، في اليوم اللي قبل الكيموثيرابي بنسميها انتسيباتوري. طب ده بيحصل ليه؟ بيحصل بروفوك بقى بالانفايرمنت، بروفوك ان العيان عارف ان هو هياخد سايكل، ممكن ده بيحصل قبل ما اصلا نبتدي ناخد الكيموثيرابي. الاكيوت بيحصل في اول 24 ساعه والبيك بتاعته في اول من 5 ل 6 ساعات. الديلي كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج بيحصل من اول يوم لغايه 5 ايام، والبيك بتاعه عاده بيبقى في اليوم الثاني او الثالث، وده اكتر بنشوفه مع الادريا والسيس بلات والكاربوبلات. عندنا بعد كده اثنين دايما بنحب نقولهم مع بعض، البريك ثرو والريفراكتوري. البريك ثرو معناها ان العيان بتاعنا كان ماشي على بروفيلاكتيك تريتمنت يعني، وبعدين ما قدرناش نوصل للتارجت بتاعنا. التارجت بتاعي انا ايه من الانتي ايماتيك؟ ان انا ابقى نال، ما عنديش نوزيا وما عنديش فوميتنج، وان الاورال انتيك بتاعي ما يتاثرش. لو العيان على بروفيلاكسس وستيل بيحصل له نوزيا او فوميت او حصل له، يبقى ده بريك ثرو. الريفراكتوري معناها ان العيان بالرغم من المانجمنت بتاعي ما وصلتش للتارجت بتاعي من الاول، ما حصلش بريك ثرو. طب ده واي داز ات ماتر ان احنا يعني مهتمين قوي بالنوزيا اند فوميتنج؟ مش بس عشان هي فيري كومن، عشان يعني البريفلنس بتاعها حوالي 70%، وده قريب قوي من الادلت بريفلنس اللي حوالي 60%، اللي هم قالوا ان هو الموست كومن ديستريسنج سايد افكت للكيموثيرابي. لكن كمان علشان زي ما دكتور حنفي كان بيتكلم على السرفايفل، صحيح النوزيا اند فوميتنج مش عاده بنوقف بيها الكيموثيرابي، لكن في بعض الادوليسنت كيسز بنحاول بيبقى فيه ريديوس للدوز، نأجل الدوز بتاعه الكيموثيرابي، وده بيأثر على البلان كيموثيرابي دوز اللي هي الدوز في الوقت اللي المفروض تتاخد ديفايدد بالوقت اللي المفروض تتاخد فيه، فممكن تأثر على السرفايفل. في بعض الادلت كيسز ما بيرضوش احيانا ياخدوا السايكل بتاعتهم لو في عندهم فوميتنج، ده بيأثر على السرفايفل. طيب ازاي بقى احنا نعمل اسسمنت؟ كل العيانين اللي بياخدوا كيموثيرابي، سواء بقى بياخدوا كيموثيرابي عشان مالجنسي ككونديشن انجريجمنت، لازم نبقى بنعمل اسسمنت للكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. نعمل اسسمنت عشان نعرف الانسيدنس اللي بيحصل، ونعرف كمان السيفيريتي بتاعتها. مهم قوي قوي ان احنا نبقى عارفين ان اللي بيعمل ده الريسبونسبيلتي دي المفروض بتاعت النيرسز، المفروض النيرس هي اللي بتعمل اسسمنت. خلاص؟ طب بنعمل اسسمنت بحاجتين. اللي فيكم شاف بعض الافلام، الفيلم اللي هو كانت بتقول ان هي سابت البن، لان لما كان دايما بيسالوها انت عندك النوزيا اللي بتجيلك كام من 10، كانت دايما بتسيب البن للورث اتاك يعني. فاحنا نفتكر دايما ان هم 10، السكور بتاعنا 10. في الاطفال الصغيرين اللي تحت 7 سنين بتبقى فيسز، علشان هو يقدر يقول هي انهي واحده فيهم. خلاص؟ في الكبار اللي فوق 7 سنين بتبقى مجرد ارقام. طب ده بيتحط فين بالعربي كده؟ المفروض ان احنا عندنا الفايل بتاع العيان فيه اوبزرفيشن شيت. خلاص؟ المفروض ان ده يبقى موجود على طول، النيرس بتعمله وانس في الشيفت بتاعها، او لو العيان ده عنده سيفير نوزيا اند فوميتنج تحطه اكتر من مره. فيبقى لازم في الشيتات بتاعتنا الاوبزرفيشن شيت نحطه. هل احنا مثلا في الدمرداش احنا بنحاول نحط الحاجات بتاعه الانتي بايوتيك شارت، الفيفر شارت، ستيل احنا محتاجين النيرسات تتدرب اكتر على ان هي تحط النوزيا سكيل اسسمنت في الفولو اب شارت بتاعها. طيب ده الكودنج. طبعا WHO كلاسيفيكيشن دي قديمه جدا في 79، وكانت فيري سمبل، وانا بحبها لانها فيري سمبل. مدياهم جريد من 4 نون او نوزيا، ترانزيانت فوميتنج او فوميتنج ريكوايرد ثيرابي، و4 اللي هي انتراكتيبل فوميتنج. بعد كده بقى اللي هي CTC 2019 قسمت النوزيا لوحدها والفوميتنج لوحده. جريد 1 بالنسبه لهم لو هو بس لوس اوف ابيتايت لكن لسه ما اثرتش على الاورال انتيك. بعد كده 2 لو الاورال انتيك ابتدى يتاثر بس من غير ما يبقى فيه سيجنيفيكانت ويت لوس. بعد كده لو خلاص الاورال انتيك بتاعي ابتدى يتاثر والكالوريك انتيك ابتدى يتاثر وانا محتاجه بقى ثيرابي، يعني محتاجه مثلا TBN او هوسبيتاليزيشن. بالنسبه للفوميتنج كل ايبيسود، عشان لما اجي اقول لكم جريد 1 او 2 ايبيسود، كل ايبيسود لازم تبقى يعني سيبريتد من الثانيه بحوالي مثلا 5 دقايق. يعني لو العيان رجع دلوقتي وبعد دقيقتين رجع تتحسب 1 ايبيسود. ما اقدرش اقول ان دي سيبريت ايبيسود الا لو بينها وبين الثانيه 5 دقايق. خلاص؟ فجريد 1 لو عندي من 1 ل 2 ايبيسود، بعد كده من 3 ل 5، اكتر من 6، ساعتها بقى لو العيان بيرجع اكتر من 6 يبقى العيان ده محتاج هوسبيتاليزيشن. كتير دلوقتي مع النت والواتساب تلاقي عيانينا بيكلمونا كتير، لو الام قالت لك رجع مره انت ممكن تديها حاجه اسمها احنا زي ما بنقول تيك هوم ميديكيشن، لغايه ما ترجع اكتر من مره لازم العيان ده يجي المستشفى وانت تعمل له اسسمنت. ستيج 4 اللي هي لايف ثريتنينج، 5 طبعا دي الديث، ما نتمناش ان احنا نشوف حد في الستيج دي. في اذر انديكيتور تقول لي ان الطفل ده ممكن يكون عنده نوزيا وهو مش عارف يعبر عنها. لو هو مش بيريفيوز الاورال انتيك، بيريفيوز الفلويد انتيك، او حتى ان هو مش بينتراكت كويس، او يعني الام تقول لك انه مش طبيعي، مش بيلعب مع اخواته، مش بيلعب معاها كذا. قبل ما اكمل بقى، مش كل عيان بيفومت ده كيموثيرابي وهو بياخد كيموثيرابي، ده كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. لازم نبقى حاطين في دماغنا الديفرنشال دايجنوزس، مهم جدا 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 ان ما ناخدهاش اسمبل از ان دي هي الموست كومن انها تكون كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج، لكن ما ننساش الحاجات الثانيه قبل ما نكمل. الحاجات الثانيه زي ايه؟ انكريز الانتراكرينيال بريشر، ان العين يكون عنده جي اي تي اوبستراكشن، ساين اوف ديهايدريشن، او اوبيويد انديوس فوميتنج. فما ننساش الديفرنشال دايجنوز. طب هو ازاي بيحصل الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج؟ لما بيتاخد الكيموثيرابي بيعمل اريتيشن للجي اي تي ميوكوزا، وبعدين ده ويطلع السيروتونين بيمسك في الريسبتور بتاعه، ده بيأثر بقى على الكيموثيرابي، على الكيمو ريسبتور تريجر زون، وعلى الفوميتنج سنتر. ودي موضحه شويه ان الكيموثيرابي عشان يحصل الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج كذا اورجان مع بعض بيبقوا انديوس، زي ما احنا شايفين في الجي اي تي بيأثر على الكروماتين سيل وعلى الفيترال افرنت نيرف، وده عن طريق السيروتونين والسبستانس بي. عند السي ان او على السي ان اس عن طريق النيورو ترانسميتر زي السيروتونين والسبستانس بي والدوبامين. ايوه عند السي ان اس بيبقى النيورو ترانسميتر، الجي اي تي التيروكروماتين عن طريق السبستانس بي والسيروتونين. في بريدكتيف يقولوا لي شويه عن السيفيريتي بتاعت الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. التيبل ده في الادلت، بس انا ليه خدته؟ بما ان انا يعني علشان السستيبيليتي تو موشن سيكنس. لو انت بتاخد هيستوري من الطفل بتاعك وهو بيجي له موشن سيكنس كتير، ده ممكن يكون سسبتبل ان هو يجي له سيفير اتاك من الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. الحاجه الثانيه اللي هو ان العيان في المره اللي فاتت كان دخل بكومبليت كيور لما حصل له كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج، عرفت الكنترول بالانتي ايمات. الاثنين دول رغم ان النقطتين دول رغم ان هم ادلت، بس كود بي ابليكابل على الاطفال. بالنسبه بقى للاطفال، اول حاجه السكس الفيميل مور سسبتبل ذان ميل، الايج لو اكثر من 3 سنين، لو حصل له بس هيستوري من كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. الدراج اللي بنستخدمه الايميتوجينيستي بتاعته، احنا قلنا الايميتوجينيستي بتاعت الكيموثيرابي معناها اللايكليهود ان هو يعمل كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. وكمان البلوك اللي هو بياخده، هل هو بياخد سنجل كيموثيرابي ولا هو بياخد بلوك من اكتر من كيموثيرابي، الدوز والادمنستريشن بتاعته، ده كله مهم. حاجات مهمه قوي بقى في الاطفال، السايكولوجيكال بيهيفير كاركترستكس، الانكزايتي سكور، البيهيفير، البرسبشن بتاعه. عاده ممكن لو الام البيرنت هنا بتلعب دور البيرنت المتوترين، ممكن الطفل كمان يبقى يجي له انكزايتي مجرد بس الانفايرمنت. وده الايميتوجينيستي بتاعت الكيموثيرابي بنعتبرهم لو الفريكونسي ان يحصل الاميسيس من 10 ل 30، مودريت لو من 30 ل 90، هاي لو اكتر من 90. وهنقول اكتر من مره ان احنا لما نيجي نعمل رانكينج للايميتوجينيستي مش لازم يبقى كل كيموثيرابي لوحده، الافضل ان انا اخدهم كبلوك مع بعضهم. ودول اللي احنا بنسميهم الايميتوجينيستي ترافيك لايت. يبقى احنا عارفين اللون الاحمر ده هايلي ايميتوجينيست، اللون ده كده زي اشارات المرور، الاخضر ده اقل حاجه. وزي ما احنا شايفين هو انا عاجبني ده اكتر من يبقى كل كيموثيرابي لوحده، انه مثلا حاطط مثلا الباك، حاططهم كالسايكل اللي احنا بنستخدمه اكتر في الكيموثيرابي. يبقى انت وانت بتعمل اسسمنت للطفل بتاعك لازم تبقى عارف ايه الكيموثيرابي اللي هو ماشي عليه، سنجل ولا بلوك، وايه البلوك اللي هو ماشي عليه، وتعمل له اسسمنت. كل ما تدخل الكيموثيرابي في البلوك اللي بعديها تبقى عارف اساس العيان بتاعك على الكيموثيرابي وتحط الريسك بتاعه. طيب ايه الانتي ايماتيك ثيرابي اللي احنا بنستخدمها؟ الجول ان انا بريفنت ان يحصل نوزيا فوميتنج، وان ما يبقاش فيه تاثير على الاورال انتيك. الحاجه ان لازم نقولها ان انت لازم تانيشيت الانتي ايماتيك ثيرابي قبل الفيرست دوز اوف كيموثيرابي علشان تو بريفنت، لان وانس ان حصل نوزي اند فوميتنج بيبقى الكنترول بتاعها اصعب. خلاص؟ ذا سيم ايديا زي البين، زي ان انت البريك ثرو بين يبقى اصعب في الكنترول من البين، نفس الايديا. وده الهيستوري بقى، لان انا بحب التاريخ حبه. الهيستوري بتاعه الانتي ايماتيك في البدايه خالص كان الفينوسايزن، بعدين ابتدى يخش لنا مثلا في الثمانينات الدوبامين انتاجونست، وبعدين في التسعينات ابتدى يخش السيروتونين انتاجونست، ويعني في اواخر التسعينات اوائل 2000 ابتدى يخش عندنا اللي هو الان كي 1 اللي هو بيشتغل على السبستانس دي. عشان ما اطولش، ده اول كلاس هنتكلم عليه اللي هو الدوبامين انتاجونست، اللي هو بيجي هنا يشتغل على الكيمو ريسبتور تريجر زون. واشهر واحد طبعا هو الميتوكلوبرومايد، انا بس مش هتكلم عليه كتير. هو افكتيف، هو بيستخدم عاده في الديلي، ما بيستخدمش في الاكيوت، بيستخدم كمان لو حصل بريك ثرو كاد اون ثيرابي. يهمني بس اقول ان هو ما فيش فيه دراج انتر اكشن مع معظم الانتي ايماتيك ثيرابي، لكن احنا بنحفظه، بنحب نخليه لو للتيك هوم ميديكيشن، يعني بنحب نديه للعيان في البيت. طيب بعد كده بقى جولدن تريتمنت هو دلوقتي اللي احنا اكتر حاجه بنستخدمها هو السيروتونين انتاجونست. ولو احنا زي ما قلنا ان احنا لما بناخد الكيموثيرابي بيأثر على الجي اي تي ميوكوزا، بيطلع السيروتونين يمسك في الريسبتور بتاعه. هنا بقى بيشتغل السيروتونين انتاجونست اللي هم كل العيله الجراني والألس كلهم مع بعض. يهمني بس هنا ان انا اقول ان ده صحيح هو اكسبنسيف، لكن هو خلاص بقى الجولد ستاندرد تريتمنت في الكيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. لكن اي حد بيستخدم الزفران او الحاجات بتاعه السيروتونين يبقى عارف ان احنا العيانين ان هو من السايد افكت بتاعته الكونستيبيشن. يبقى الحكيمه تبقى عارفه ان العيان اللي ماشي على واحد من السيروتونين انتاجونست انها بتسال على الباول هابت لازم. ولو العيان دخل في كونستيبيشن فما بنحبش العيانين بتوعنا خالص تخش في كونستيبيشن علشان السايد افكت بتاعتها كلها. يبقى احنا بنحسن الاورال انتيك، ولو اضطرينا ندي موبيكول او لاكسيف لازم نديه. يبقى دي مهمه قوي ان احنا كمسج العيانين اللي ماشيين عليه لازم نسال على الباول هابت. مش هخش في ده قوي، لكن احنا بنقول ان هو الاندامستيرون بيستخدم في اول يوم بارنترال، وبعد كده من اليوم الثاني بيستخدم اورالي. واحنا لا نفضل ان احنا نستخدمه قوي اكتر من يعني لما العيان يروح بيه البيت. ده لو كان انبيشنت. الاوت بيشنت برضه لو هو ويكلي تو مودريت ايميتوجينيستي، الكيموثيرابي اللي انا بستخدمه برضه ممكن استخدم لو هو اوت بيشنت ممكن استخدم في اول يوم اي دي وبعدين اورالي. احنا ايه الاورال اللي احنا استخدمناه في جامعه عين شمس؟ ده النيو دوزج فورم من الروت من الاوندانستيرون. هو يا اما بيستخدم كملت تابلت، يعني تابلت صغيره بتتحط على اللسان ومش بتبقى سابلينجوال وتدوب في البق، او اللي هو الفيلم اللي هو الاورو ديسبيرسبل فيلم، وده عامل زي كده طابع البوسطه صغنن انت بتشيله وبيتحط على اللسان من بره. كالتشري لسه الناس مش educated about the use of the film. احنا جربنا بس في الجامعه عندنا اللي هو الجراني as an oral tablet مع العيانين الاكيوت ليمفوبلاستيك ليكيميا اللي بياخدوا هاي دوز ميثوتريكسات as an investigator initiated clinical trial، جايبه ريسبونس كويس بس لسه الداتا بتاعتها مش ببلش. في زي ما احنا شايفين هنا في بيبر كتيره بقى ابتدت تتكلم على المود بتاع الاورال ديسبيرسبل ديليفري اوف دراج. ده بيتكلم عن التابلت، هو عامل زي طعم الفراوله كده. اول ما بتحط التابلت او الفيلم، احيان كتير بيبقى الفيلم بعد ما بيتشال من البق بيدي طعم مراره خفيفه كده صغيره، رغم ان هو ليه طعم الفراوله. موجود منه التركيز ال4 وال8، ممكن يتاخد كتيك هوم ميديكيشن. بس لما العيان لو يوم ما يبقى جاي ما يستحسنش ياخد التيك هوم ميديكيشن بتاعته من السيروتونين انتاجونست قبل ما يجي. هو رابيد اونست، احسن في الولاد اللي احنا مضطرين نديهم اورال ميديكيشن اورال انتي ايميتيك بس عندهم سوالوينج ديفيكالتي، وبيحسن الكومبلاينس بتاع العيان. دول بقى العائله كلها اللي احنا بنسميهم السيروتونين انتاجونست. اول واحد منهم طالع اللي هو الجراني، زي ما قلت لكم في منه ترانسديرمال وفي منه اورالي، بس الترانسديرمالي ما اعتقدش ان هو موجود في مصر. الاورال منه اللي هو الميلك تابلت، والاوندانستيرون مش موجود منه غير الاورال، والاي دي مش موجود منه ترانسديرمال، ودول اللي احنا بنسميهم الفيرست جينيريشن. السكند جينيريشن اللي هو البلانستيرون، وده الوحيد اللي ممكن يستخدم في الديليد كيموثيرابي انديوس نوزيا اند فوميتنج. ليه عامله عليه كده؟ لان ده خلاص ما بقيناش نستخدمه، لازم بس اقول عليه اللي هو البرانستيرون ما عادش بيستخدم خالص علشان الكارديو فاسكولار ادفيرس ايفنت بتاعته. ده آلات البيت نيو ميديكيشن، بيستخدم على زي ما احنا قلنا على الان كي 1 ريسبتور، بيمنع ان السبستانس يمسك في الريسبتور. صحيح هو FDA ابروف، ولكن ليه كومبليكيشن كتيره. هو ويل توليريتد لكن ليه كومبليكيشن كتيره، من ان هو في سيجنيفيكانت دراج انتر اكشن. يعني لازم لما يبقى بياخده يبقى لازم معاك الكلينيكال فارماسي اون بورد علشان الدراج انتر اكشن. في ادويه طبعا الاستيرويد بس بيتحط كاد اون ثيرابي، ما اقدرش استخدمه فتره طويله عشان السايد افكت بتاعته. الريكومنديشن في 2016 ان في الاكيوت كاد